Board of Supervisors meeting on April 17th, 2018. It's still, what a wonderful day, even if it is tax day. Hopefully everybody got their taxes in. I called meeting to order, and now that we have Supervisor Rivas here, we'll ask him to lead us in the pledge.
Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Chairman has to turn off his ringer on his phone, too. Can I have a certificate of posting?
So moved.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. We'll move on to presentations and recognitions. I have two proclamations on the agenda. I probably should do the formality and have a motion to approve the two proclamations if we can.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. The first one is declaring the month of May as Water Awareness Month. And I have Supervisor Medina to present that proclamation to Mr. Novak, I assume.
Morning. Hi, Jan. Thank you for your help.
You're welcome.
Supervisor.
Proclamation, Water Awareness Month, May 2018. Whereas California's arid and semi-arid climate, its ambiguous and evolving, I can't even read today, an evolving economy and its continually growing population have combined to make shortages and conflicting demands the norm. And whereas the rising concern of climate change could limit the state and federal government's water infrastructure due to less snowpack, and whereas the health, welfare, and quality of life for our community depends on a reliable, high-quality water supply, and whereas the need to develop a diverse portfolio approach to water supply reliability that includes a balanced combination of conservation, water reuse, and new supplies is critical to our region's future. Now, therefore, the Board of Supervisors of San Benito County proclaim May 2018 as Water Awareness Month and urge all citizens, businesses, industries, institutions, and public agencies to revere the water usage and water systems for water use efficiency and to contact a water supplier for water-saving ideas and assistance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just a quick word, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Just an update on our supply. We've had all this rain lately, but we're still below our normal precipitation rates for our county, about 9 inches so far, from what I gathered at the district. We usually get 13 to 15 inches. So even though we've had all this late rain, we're still under our normal rainfall. The good thing is there's water in storage right now in the Central Valley Project, so we have that as backup. But we have to be judicious with our water use. I'm really proud of the community. During the drought, we've really stepped up to answer the call for a reduction of our water use, and we've maintained that even after the emergency was declared over with. We've gone from, in the late 1990s, 220 gallons per person per day in the Hollister urban area. Now we're down to 105 gallons per day. So we are making gains on our efficient use of water, but there's still plenty of gains to be made, especially in landscapes. And that's why I come before you each year at this time of year, because we're just starting to get into our irrigation season, and you can see that water use start to climb up. It's like a bell curve. We'll see it climb up, and then July and August it peaks and goes back down. And landscapes are where we can make a lot of savings. So if anybody needs help with their irrigation systems or what kind of plants to grow in our area that don't use a lot of water, contact my agency. It's the Water Resources Association of San Benito County, 637-4378. But keep up the good work, and we'll make more gains.
Mr. Novak, before you sit down, I think it might be a good idea to put a plug in for the improved water quality
Yes.
in urban coming out of the urban.
Right, yeah. We had the new West Hills water treatment plant open at the end of October. The whole Hollister urban area between that plant and the LaSalle water treatment plant on top of Sunny Slope, we're treating a lot more surface water, which has a lot better water quality than our groundwater. Doesn't have as much mineral content in it. Before the project, we were getting hardness readings from high 20s to low 30s of grains of hardness per gallon. Now with the improvements in treating more surface water, it's about 8 to 11 grains of hardness. So it's improved dramatically. It's still not soft water. Soft water is like 0 to 5 grains of hardness per gallon, but we're close. So we're trying to get people to turn in their water softeners. You shouldn't need them for your appliances. If there's dietary restrictions or things like that, you might need them, but the quality water now should be good for our appliances. We're offering a $300 rebate if you demolish your water softener, and this has a lot of beneficial things to it. First of all, it protects our groundwater basin. It helps with our recycled water effort by making a real high-quality recycled water, and it's just, it helps us meet our discharge requirements. So it's a good thing not to have salt or potassium in our sewer system, so we can help you with that. And even if you have a water softener and you want to keep using it, give us a call. We can go out there, do a hardness test right at your property and dial in on how much hardness is in your neighborhood and set it properly. Because we see a lot of people just crank that thing over to the hardest levels. So we're here to help, and thank you very much. I really appreciate the support of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we have the second proclamation. I was going to give it to Supervisor Rivas, but I decided to move it over to Supervisor De La Cruz because he has a higher level of appreciation for high heels, no matter who wears them. So, Supervisor De La Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate it.
I brought some for you today.
Looks like they'll fit.
No, actually,
But in case you want to go sparkly this year, we've got these as well.
no, I appreciate it. I think I like the sparkly ones. I got to give a little story of them. My family and I, we usually plan our mom's, birthdays. She's getting up there in age, and all my brothers and sisters are getting together and we're organizing. And the target date was April 28th, and it happens to be on this special moment. And I tell my brothers, I'm not going to be able to go, and my mom's not supposed to know. And she found out, and she goes, "What? You're going to miss a walk them out in her shoes over my birthday? You're going to walk them out in her shoes." And so
Great.
I'm going to be there. All my family will be celebrating my mom's birthday, but they'll all be with me in spirit. And today, the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors would like to acknowledge and provide a proclamation for Walk 'em Out in Her Shoes Day. Whereas Walk 'em Out in Her Shoes Day is intended to draw attention to the fact that rape, sexual assault, and intimate partner abuse remain serious issues in our society, and whereas in addition to the immediate physical and emotional costs, rape, sexual assault, intimate partner abuse may also have associated consequences of post-traumatic stress disorder, abuse, substance abuse, depression, homelessness, eating disorder, and suicide. And whereas one person, organization, agency, or community can eliminate rape, sexual assault, or intimate partner abuse on their own, we must work together to educate our entire population about what can be done to prevent rape, sexual assault, intimate partner abuse, support survivors and their significant others. Therefore, now, before the Board of Supervisors, resolve that the County Board of Supervisors designate April 28, 2018 as Walk 'em Out in Her Shoes Day in San Benito County. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for the record, I will be attending, and I see our Mayor Ignacio's out in the audience, and thank you. And him and I will actually be walking with our high heels, and I've actually asked my wife to help me shop for some red shoes because I am practicing this time. Because I remember the last couple of times I was sore and I could not finish the line, and my intention this year is to finish the line.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm here to represent Community Solutions and Emmaus House. We provide services for victims who are been traumatized by sexual assault teen dating violence, domestic abuse, and any other types of abuses here in San Miguel County. We really appreciate that the Board of Supervisors has endorsed this program. We're going into our 7th year now for starting Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. And I'm going to leave some pledge forms in the back. I would like you all to take the Red Shoe Challenge this year. Challenge another agency. I know the Board of Supervisors has already challenged our City Council. And some of you may have seen Mayor Ignacio's feet in our promo. He's the one in the candy cane striped shoes, by the way. Those are just for him. And Supervisor Dela Cruz, I got to say, the second year he participated, what a trooper. He tried on 5 different pairs of shoes throughout the walk and had some support of others to help him make that finish line. So I hope that you get to your mom's birthday soon and without sore feet this year. And thank you to everyone. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our last presentation comes from Health and Human Services Agency. Mr. Riding Sword, I think you have a presentation for the 2018 Blue Ribbon Award by Child Abuse Prevention Council.
I'd like to turn it over to the chair of the council, Captain Taylor.
Thank you, sir. Great. Welcome, Captain.
Good morning, Captain Taylor with the Sheriff's Office, but today I stand before you as one of the chairs of the Child Abuse Prevention Council for San Benito County. I don't want to take up too much time because I like to talk to all of you and I like to talk a lot, but we're here today for to award the 2018 Blue Ribbon Award. So each year our council takes nominations from the community for outstanding volunteer work done by an individual or organization benefiting the health, safety, and well-being of children in San Benito County. And this year's award recipient was a unanimous vote by the council, and I'd like to invite up Joel Esqueda and Roland Resendez, co-founders of Articulture. Come on up and bring whoever you want to bring up with you. They've been in business for about 1 year. I'm going to present them with their plaque, but I'd rather them tell you what it is that they do, and then any questions you have for them, so I can get out of your hair. So this is for Articulture. The CAPC of San Benito County presents the 2018 Blue Ribbon Award to Articulture for benefiting the health, safety, and well-being of children in our community. Congratulations.
Good morning, everyone. We want to extend our deepest gratitude to the Child Abuse Prevention Council. It means a lot to us. We're really touched and really honored to receive this award. So thank you so much, and please extend our gratitude to the entire council for us. Thank you, County Board of Supervisors, for having us here today. I just want to say a couple of things. I want to say thank you to my partner, Joel, for working so tirelessly over the year. It's been hard. He works all day with Articulture, then he does have a full-time job at night. The ladies standing here with us have been with us since the very beginning. Some are volunteers, and they're just close family and friends. We want to say thank you to the entire community that supported us over the year, and our other family and friends that couldn't be here, because we feel that it's a true partnership, the work that we're doing here in San Benito between us and the county. Really quick, I just want to tell you a little bit of background about who we are and what we do. Joel and myself grew up on the east side of San Jose, and needless to say, we didn't have the most ideal upbringing. We lacked very little resources to positive forms of outlet of expression. I grew up at the community center on the east side of San Jose mostly because my mom worked really hard to provide for us. And Joel's mom likes to brag about how he would take Sharpie markers and write all over her walls and stuff while we were growing up. So we feel like it's vital that all children have access to resources and positive forms of expression, because it can change your life. And now that we're in a position to where we can provide that access, we decided to start Articulture just over a year ago and provide affordable, accessible arts here in Hollister. The one thing that I always like to say, and people probably don't know, is that we do a lot of creative events throughout the community. We partner with lots of local businesses, so we do help to boost the local economy and businesses, support local businesses. But what we do, and what we really, really love to do, is that we have an honor till at our art studio that allows us to have children come to our studio once a week and take art classes with Joel, whether they can afford to do so or not. And that's what we're here for today. We really pride ourselves on that. I also want to thank the mayor who's here today to support us, because In 2014, for our senior projects to graduate from college, he partnered with us, and the city partnered with us to allow us to paint the utility boxes, and that kind of spearheaded the work that we're doing here in Hollister now, and that we've been doing since then. So thank you to Ignacio for coming out here and for giving us that very first opportunity, and thank you all for your love and support. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to all of the things we get to do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Actually, Mr. Chair, Rolling, will you stay at the podium up there, please?
Sure.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, of course.
Mr. Chair, every year the Board of Supervisors within their district tries to select worthwhile organizations to help the cause, further the cause. And this year, with the assistance of Supervisor Medina and myself, we would like to contribute $1,500 to your organizations and continue to provide the good service in this community. Okay? Congratulations.
Thank you so much. If I can just make one more comment. Last year, these two same Board of Supervisors supported our organization, and it was because of them that we got to buy a kiln and give pottery and ceramic services here in Hollister, California. So thank you for that. This year, we plan on buying a pottery wheel with this money to extend the services. So thank you so much for that. We appreciate it.
Very good. That's very good work, and thank you, supervisors, for supporting this endeavor. Now we'll move on to public comment. This is for items not on today's agenda, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Yes, David Padilla.
Hi, Board. Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is David Padilla. I'm with SEIU 2015, the Home Care Workers Union, and we've met before. And we're here today to, again, highlight the struggles of home care providers in the county. As you all know, IHSS, or In-Home Supportive Services, is a vital program that provides long-term care for elderly and people with disabilities in the community. And as you all know, currently we are in negotiations with the county, and we really do hope that it's a path towards making improvements for the program, specifically for wages and benefits of home care providers. They're currently making the minimum wage of $11 an hour, and we really believe that that is not enough to be able to afford rent, food, and all of the other things that we all need to survive. And so today we'll have a member of our union come up and explain to you all a little bit the reason why we're here today. And we really hope that these negotiations that we're taking up on really are the way towards making those improvements. And we look forward to the next bargaining session and surely making sure that there's cooperation on both sides. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bella Martinez.
Good morning, supervisors.
Good morning.
My name is Belen Martinez, and I am a member of SEIU 2015 and a home care provider. I am here today to deliver over 300 petitions signed from community members that support IHSS and the people that provide care. As you may know, the last time providers received a wage increase was over 3 years ago, and we are currently making minimum wage. We are in negotiations with the county public authority, and we hope this is a step towards improving the wages and benefits of providers. On behalf of 500 union members in San Benito County, we come to deliver these petitions from your constituents that care deeply about disabled and elderly people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I give this to? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board.
Good morning.
I'd like to make a few comments about the reimbursement agreement that was approved on April 3rd. I think the Board should direct the staff to stop wasting time and resources processing this application. There's a few reasons why. One of them, the county doesn't have the ability to stop some of these developments from getting remedies attached to them once they start the application process. So like Mr. Medina was saying in the last supervisors meeting, there should be an agreement, but it should be a pre-application agreement. It shouldn't go to the application process because there's a lot of things that are attached to that. And so one of the things is the remedies that the developer can seek. And I think that none of you are in favor of developing that far out on Balsa Road. It is agricultural land. And as part of the Workforce Development Board, and agriculture is very important to this region, and I think it shouldn't be overlooked. Amendments to the general plan are also another hurdle that needs to be addressed. There are also a few other obstacles with regards to the buffer zone that is already in place for the chemical plant. So in essence, I think that staff needs to not be as adamant about getting reimbursement and stopping the process before it actually starts. So that is what I am trying to relate to the board, is that we don't have the resources to spend time on some of these applications, and we need to really look at what we're processing as far as getting those developments that are more feasible to the county and to what we're trying to accomplish without trying to spend more effort than we really need to. So thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I have no other speakers.
Would anyone else would like to step forward to address the board on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and move it to department head announcements. CEO Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we do have one announcement out of RMA. They've asked us to pull item number 13 on consent. They'd like to hear this at a later date, so I'll be pulling that item per RMA's request. I'd also like to introduce your board to our new management analyst. Management analyst one, I'd like to go ahead and ask Dulce Alonso to step up to the podium to give her, just say a few words. Dulce?
Hello, board. I'm Dulce Alonso. I'm the new management analyst, and this is my second week on board, and I'm really excited to be part of the team and be able to make a difference in our community. Some of my experiences, I have a little bit over a year experience working in the public sector. I worked for the state as a staff analyst. Prior to that, I most of my experience is in the private sector, so I'm excited to be on board, and thank you.
Great. We look forward to working with you, and best of luck in your new position here. Thank you very much.
Thanks. That's all the announcements we have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to board announcements. Supervisor Medina.
Yes, just for further discussion, possibly on the second board meeting in May, because I know the first board meeting is pretty packed already. Is that correct? I'd like to talk about the CSAs. In really talking about manning, talking about what actually the responsibility of our RMA manager along with their staff, what their daily duties are and how we can provide better customer service. I have received a lot of phone calls from a lot of different CSAs. Supervisor Munzer has the most CSAs, I would assume. Is that correct, Mr. Munzer?
I believe so.
Yeah. So I'd like to make sure that we have an understanding of the CSA system. Number one, how much money we collect from the CSAs on a yearly basis. And I know Mr. Gerton there has interviewed a lot of people for that position and never seems to, not because of him, but never seems to lay a person that is willing to work here in San Benito County, but we need to find something different to make sure we can provide that customer service. So I would just like that on the agenda, and I'll forward you some more things. Other than that, that's it.
Thank you, Supervisor Medina. Yes, if we need to have that discussion as a board, and a couple other ideas that probably a few of us up here have as far as dealing with and working with the CSAs. Supervisor De La Cruz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank the 4-H for hosting the annual breakfast at Blau Park. It was well attended. A lot of members of the community showed up, and my daughter used to be in 4-H, and trust me, from a personal aspect, a lot of the kids appreciate the contributions and donations that they give to the 4-H, and we made our participation by supporting them and being there and having a good meal and breakfast with the 4-H. On another note, Mr. Chair, COG did meet. We did discuss some issues. In fact, it's on the agenda. Mary's out in the audience, and so I won't actually reveal any of the information. I'll wait till Mary makes the presentation, but it relates to a sales tax about our widening Highway 25 and some other maintenance and repairing our roads. We're also going to have a special meeting May 1st, correct? May 1st, to invite the members of the public on the sales tax for the roads and Highway 25. On that, I'll just keep it at the surface level, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm happy you brought that up. And any groups that would like to entertain guests from the COG board to speak on transportation issues, we certainly have the phone line open to answer questions and kind of go over ideas that the public has and the direction that we hope to go in.
Actually, Mr. Chair, on that note, as the chairman of the COG, and I'm asking my fellow supervisors that we all reach out into our supervisors district and contact and reach out to those interesting groups and start talking with them and how this process might unfold and work. And so I will make a pledge that we do that, and I'll do that in my district, Mr. Chair. Good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rivas?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Supervisor Munzer?
Nothing this week.
Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda. Any board members would like to pull any items? Seeing none, anybody from the public would like to pull any of the consent items? Seeing none, we'll pull 13. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Move on to public hearing.
I was going to present the background for this one, if that.
Okay.
Every year since approximately 2014, CSA 31 has adopted a water conservation ordinance. This year, as set forth, I believe in Exhibit B, there's been allocated 109.17 acre feet, which is a decrease from some previous years. 15.6 acre feet of that has been set forth in reserves. Our office, the department prepared this resolution, but have been familiar with this process over prior years. Every year we bring this forth for the board to adopt a water conservation ordinance. The ordinance figures are set forth in Exhibit C. It has a split down between the usage for agricultural usage and also the allocation for domestic allotments. And when the board adopts this, then these will be the allocations for the rest of this water year.
Okay. Mr. Gurdon, you have anything to add?
Just that I've been asked to read the title into the record for you. It's an ordinance of the County of San Benito establishing a water conservation program for the area served by County Service Area Number 31 for the 2018-2019 water year. And then also to ask the board to make the necessary CEQA findings that are laid out in the report for you, which I can go over if you want me to.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, I'll open up the public hearing. Any comments or speaker cards? Anybody would like to address the public on this item? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, before we go to that, Barbara, it seems like your office had a lot of trouble in enforcing this. Has that been dealt with in this new ordinance?
It's the same ordinance, basically. What we need to
So we still have no way of enforcing this?
No, we do have a way of enforcing it. The department needs to do the allocations and get us the information early on in the year, and then we do have a mechanism for enforcing this. We need to have the monthly allocations, like as soon as people start going over these allocations, if they can bring those forth to us.
Who is they?
The department, they need to.
That would be us.
Yeah.
So relative to the what Supervisor Medina brought up earlier and the oversight of the CSAs, lacking that CSA coordinator, I think that the RMA hasn't done a thorough job of getting out and monitoring the meters on a regular basis and then using that information to put together a report that then goes to county council so that they can go through the enforcement process on this. So that's something that we're working on and we're doing better. And so this year I can promise you that we will do better on that.
But it seems like previous year there was some violations identified and it sat in the county council office until the rainy season started again and there was no reason to enforce it anymore. If we have violations, I sure hope that the county council will handle it much quicker than in previous times. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that we do better too. It's a customer service issue, like Supervisor Medina brought up, and we don't want it to be punitive. We want it to be educational so that it works for everybody.
One of the things that concerns me, especially when we're utilizing the blue valve water, is that you go over your allocation, it gets real nasty with the penalties. It's punitive almost if you go over your allocations, and you hope that the whole community is working together to stay within their allotments, and it's just fair. Any other comments from the board? At this point, I'll entertain a motion then.
Mr. Chair, motion to approve contract with VN Sons Building Services for street sweeping services.
No, you're on the wrong one.
It's 13.
Per staff recommendation.
Per staff recommendation.
Yeah, which is to make the CEQA findings set forth in the agenda item transmittal and accept the introduction and waiver of the further reading of the ordinance and adopt the ordinance amending water allocation requirements for County Service Area 31 for 2018 and 19 water year.
As stated.
Have a second?
Second.
Second, Supervisor Munzer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Now we'll move on to a regular agenda. County CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this particular item, as you're aware, on March 22nd, 6 p.m., your board had a joint franchise regional agreement meeting with the two cities, and you heard the presentations from the three franchises or the three companies that would offer services to pick up waste at curbside, and today we're at the next phase of that process, in essence, where you're going to decide on which direction to go. So what I like to do is I like to invite up Kevin to kind of highlight a few points with this particular item, as well as Kathleen, if she would, and then at this point, your board can move forward with this particular item. So, Kevin, if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Supervisors. I'll just do a brief overview on this staff report. What you have before you is a recommendation from the Selection Committee to enter into exclusive negotiations with Recology. There are a series of conditions of approval that are listed under the staff recommendation that essentially address, if you approve the recommendation, there are very specific things that will be basically worked through during negotiations. In terms of the process, what would happen is if we're successful in the negotiations, we would come back with the final contract that you would vote on. If we reach any impasse during the negotiations, we would come back and Ray would outline for you where we're at. If we're unsuccessful in reaching agreement with Recology, the recommendation is then to negotiate with Green Waste Recovery. So I'm here to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? Seeing none. I'm going to allow a little bit more time to maybe the company's representatives to make a presentation to the board and to the public. And I'll start with Recology, if they would like to address the board. I'll go with 5 minutes.
Well, the good news is I don't need 5 minutes.
That's fine.
We've spoken to you a number of times. We've had a couple of workshops, and we presented our presentation to you and our proposal to you. So I'll make my comments brief. Recology is a unique company. The uniqueness of it is that we're not a public company. We're not publicly owned. Each and every employee of Recology is an employee owner. So we are an employee-owned company, and that brings a sense of pride and ownership to the employees, and gives them an incentive to do a good job out there. What they do out there represents their company. And we've shown in the past that we do provide good service to you. I've spoken to you before about the hardworking employees of Recology. They can't be here today. They've been here in the past. They do have day jobs, so they're out there right now collecting recycling and solid waste from your residents. They come to work. They do a good job serving the community, and then they go home to their families. Many of them who live here in San Benito County and Hollister. Recology and their employees are part of the community. Their kids go to school here. They're active in the community nonprofit groups, and they spend their hard-earned dollars at your stores and restaurants. The last few months, I will tell you, have been quite anxious times for these Recology families, waiting to hear the fate of their jobs. We are very pleased to see the recommendations of the Selection Committee recommend Recology as your hauler. When the process started, we heard you say that you wanted to make sure you got a good deal, a fair price, and got good service provided to you. Recology provided you the lowest cost proposal while continuing to provide good service. We look forward to implementing the new programs in the new franchise agreement and meeting the diversion goals that are set forth in the regional agency. You can count on us to continue to provide good customer service. And you can also count on us to remain committed to the communities we serve. We're involved in the communities. We're out and about, and we're dedicated to that. So I'll be happy to answer. Those are my comments. I'll happy to answer any questions you may have.
Supervisor Windsor has a question.
Phil, your diversion rate over the last course of the contract that you've had have not been good. You've had your reasons for it. But I believe one of your answers to your improving the diversion rate was to partner with one of the nonprofit in the community. And I believe that nonprofit is closing their doors.
We've spoken to the director of the nonprofit, and our understanding is that they plan to reopen at a different location.
Okay, so is that what's going on?
That's our understanding. We did speak to Pat's Place, and their executive director has told us they just seemed they want to relocate. And to be honest, they're waiting to see whether we're successful, because we'll be one of their larger providers of goods.
Okay, because I talked to them a month or so ago. They did not indicate that they were going to be closing the doors to relocate, and so they caught me by surprise when I drove past there.
Yeah, we saw the article too, and
okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
All right, thank you.
That's our understanding.
Okay, but say they don't reopen. Do you have a plan B?
Well, we'll have to find one.
Okay,
and we will.
Okay, thank you.
We will.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Phil.
All right, thank you.
I'll invite the representative for Green Waste to make a little presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Emily Finn with Green Waste Recovery. Thanks for allowing us a few extra minutes to present today. As you guys know, this has been a process that's been going on for a good 18 months, and we understand that everyone's anxious to have it conclude sooner rather than later. We do have a couple of questions and urge your consideration on a few items. One of the things I think that's important to note, just to frame the discussion here, is that this is not about the employees losing their jobs or them having concern. Not only is it good business for an incumbent to be able to bring those employees on board, but it was also a requirement of the RFP. So I think that that's something that is really important to remember. Green Waste Recovery, our bid was the highest recommended, the highest on the ranking criteria. And that was done by a committee of all of the members of the regional agency, and we came out on top. We aren't clear why the recommendation is different than what the evaluation committee came up with. What we see today is we see that the negotiation parameters for you to proceed with exclusive negotiations with Recology are looking at the deficiencies of their proposal as compared to our proposal, which was the highest ranked proposal. One of the questions that we have to the board today is, knowing that there are certain criteria that are going to be considered during the negotiations, as Kevin mentioned, what are the criteria for whether or not those are successful? One of them was a reduction in carbon footprint. How is this board or how is the negotiation team going to know if 1% reduction, 2% reduction in carbon footprint is sufficient? One of the reasons that our proposal ranked the highest over the other two bidders is that we didn't have a subsidization of the rates. The commercial sector was not heavily subsidizing the residential sector. We know that that's something that the evaluation team had concern about, which again is why our proposal came out on top with regard to the rates. So the question also in terms of the negotiation team is, how do you know what exactly that criteria is? How much do those commercial rates need to come down to be able to make the negotiations successful? We know that the organics rates, for example, with Recology are 110% higher than green waste at the lowest level of organics. So as businesses start adopting the mandatory organics program, Recology's rates are 110% higher than Green Waste's. Those are concerns that we have. We want to make sure, and we did make sure in our bid, that we had sustainability in the rates and that we wouldn't have to come back to the ratepayers. So we urge your consideration of two things today. Number one is to work with your staff and the negotiation team to have some real criteria of what is going to determine whether or not those negotiations are successful. And also urge your consideration that you could integrate into your resolution, which would be concurrent negotiations with Green Waste Recovery. You have nothing to lose by doing that. You've already invested a lot of time, your staff has invested a lot of time, and so adding just a few other meetings on top of that to do a concurrent negotiation with Green Waste Recovery so that you can consider in the future 2 franchise agreements and which really gives you the most bang for your buck. There's really no harm in doing that. So we strongly urge your consideration either for the very definitive criteria of what's going to determine whether those negotiations are successful or in the alternative to enter into concurrent negotiations with Green Waste. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I'll invite the representative from RJR now, and
okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, all. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Board of Supervisors. Thank you all. It's been a very long, stressful process, and everybody did great work. Evaluation team, Kevin did a great job, and Hannah, I know, and Kathleen, and just everybody in general in the evaluation team have been doing good. I stand here before just one last plea. I mean, a lot of what Green Waste did say, there's a lot of truth to that, as well as what we can do. We have a permitted facility here in town. You know, we are making upgrades. I'm sure some of you have seen. We've been doing a lot of upgrades at our facility to help meet better diversion requirements for the county. We're fully permitted. We do not have to go through any more process to open up a new facility. The only process we have is making upgrades. You know, and it just alone in our county with just the upgrades, you know, we are a county business. So with this, you know, being able to negotiate with us, there's a lot of positive on this. The county would benefit, you know, extremely benefit on this. With building a new facility, the building impact fees, you're looking at nearly $40,000 that go toward the county. Our property tax is going to go from $27,000 to nearly $53,000 a year. That is a lifetime assessment that will never change unless we end up keep doing more improvements to our facility. The sales tax alone from purchasing new equipment for this contract, let alone just for the county, you're looking over $300,000. Those are big numbers for the county that could use this. I pulled the Bradley Burns for 2017, and we were looking at $2 million. This helps. Anything helps our county. Our money is spent here locally. Every single person that we would hire to build this facility is going to be local. Our rates were right in the middle. You know, we not the highest, not the lowest, but anything's open for negotiations. There is nothing to lose by going to negotiations. Other counties in our areas have the city is provided by one contractor and the county is provided by another contractor. Who's to say that we can't do it as well here in our county? I just ask that you would please just consider looking into possibly going into negotiations with us. Maybe dual track negotiations, but we're just looking for that opportunity because there is a lot more opportunity that can be. We service currently an area that nobody else wanted to service, and we've been doing this for the past 18 years. It would open up more opportunity for the other San Benito County residents that aren't included on this franchise. So please just urge you if you can just please consider looking into our company. And it was said by the evaluation committee that all 3 companies are capable to perform the job. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you very much. At this point, I'll have public comment, and the public comment is limited to 3 minutes. Would anybody like to speak on this decision?
Robert Rodriguez Sr.
Good morning.
Good morning, Councilman, Supervisors. Like Robert mentioned, we're a local company. We do have the facilities, we do have the capacity, and we've been servicing South County for the last 18 years, the school districts, which are excluded from franchise agreements. We do all of them in just about in San Benito County. And if you're going to go in negotiations, you would consider not just one, all three, or two. And as far as, I know the process, like Green Waste mentioned, that they can get the permits. They're not going to get the permits in a time frame of 4 months. To get all the permits takes at least a year or two. So if you go negotiate with them, they agree to put a facility here in San Benito County. It's not going to happen for 2 to 3 years. By the time they go through the whole process. But anyway, those are just my comments. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Anybody else?
Good morning, Supervisors and Chairman. My name is Elia Salinas, and I'm a local resident. And I would like for the board to consider doing negotiations with RJR. They are already a local company, and I really think that we should try to continue to support our local companies. They hire local people, their company's local, the taxes are being paid here. It's my understanding, if I remember correctly, it's about 41% of the registration fees stay in the county, and their vehicles are registered in San Benito County. The other two companies, they're out of the area. Their employees, a majority, are out of the area. They're actually not here. So I would think that it would be in the best interest for the county to try to keep it with a local company, as well as I think that the community benefits that we were talking about earlier, that it's Pat's Place or whatever, what else are these companies bringing? I know that RJI is already doing community benefits locally. They're spending money, they're giving time. And so aside from giving recycling furniture to Pat's Place, what else are they doing? Are they actually putting money into the county for nonprofits? And are the other companies, actually the other Green Waste, are they also offering anything that's going to be staying locally, financially, helping nonprofits? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, and I'll probably just recognize myself first in the fact that I served on the committee throughout this whole process, and as stated earlier, we had some 3 very good companies with very competitive bids. Any of them could do the job. We're very fortunate as a county to have this to our have these choices. So, and it's a hard decision. It's a hard decision for our staff and our consultants to sort through this process. It's been a lengthy process with our 2 cities and the county. We came up with a grade system, so to speak, to take into effect different criteria. I know starting out, Recology has done a real excellent job in the community. It's one of the things that, as a supervisor and speaking with my constituents, and they've been happy with the service, real happy with the service. And as the last public speaker asked about, and rightfully so, do they contribute to our community? And during this process, I've had more than one organization say that they've been active participants in helping with, manage the waste during events, and they have contributed. I was, as Green Waste representative mentioned, I wasn't too worried about those folks losing their jobs, but there is an uncertainty when you get a paycheck from somebody else, and things do change when that occurs. I'm going to go through some of my notes here. And, I think Green Waste really put together a proposal that really showed their strength in diversion rates and meeting state mandates, especially in other jurisdictions that they service right now, and that scored pretty high on their bid process, and I think that's what kind of carried them to the top of that list. And the rate structure is one of those things that is, tremendously complex in all three of the bids. And garbage rates are, tough to follow. But at the end of the day, way I interpreted where it was that the residential rates were very competitive with Recology. And I truly do believe that Recology can reach the state mandates and diversion rates that California will have going forward. As we go into contract negotiations, personally, one of the things that was real high on my list was a business that was located here in San Bernardino County, and we put that into our bid structure. As we know, Recology is in Santa Clara County, and I think personally, for me to support the final contract, they have to have an office here in San Bernardino County and divert the sales tax for new garbage bins, new equipment, and so forth, at least our fair share here in San Benito. And also, our staff, our consultant, has to be cognizant as we drafting these, negotiations for the final contract to that we meet the our state mandates, and that the two cities and the county is not held liable for any shortfalls, and that our rates stay as they were presented in the bidding process. So with that, I at this point in time, personally, as one supervisor, I'm supporting Recology in the contract negotiations, and that sitting on the committee, that's where I'm at. But like I said, we've had a very competitive bid process. I think I have confidence in all three companies, but my constituents have spoken that they feel comfortable keeping Recology as their provider at this point in time. Thank you. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, so was this before the council yesterday? Was someone from...
Yeah, it was before the council, and the council...
Is there someone from the city here that can provide an update? Or?
We have the mayor here. I can give you a quick update that they voted 4-0.
I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but
yeah,
I thought that would be a representative.
They did vote 4-0 with this moving forward with Recology last night.
To begin negotiations?
Begin negotiations with Recology, 4-0.
Supervisor Medina?
Just to elaborate on that, Robert, is I did see the council meeting yesterday. It was a 4-0 vote. Jim Gillio had to recuse himself. Other than that, it was to use Recology as number one and then having the Green Waste as a backup. So that was basically spoken on yesterday or last night.
Any Supervisor Munzer?
Well, my comments are this has been a very difficult process. But early on, people would sit there and say, Ecology has done a good job. Why don't you just extend the contract? And I felt, as part of government being transparent, we had to go through the RFP process. We opened it up for a bid. We have gone through this bid process, had many meetings, workshops, public hearings about this process, and we have 3 good companies that have given us proposals. We do have a state mandate diversion rate that we need to attain, and we're not anywhere near that attainment. And so that needs to be addressed with whoever gets the contract or whoever we continue to negotiate with. Those need to be addressed. But the process, I feel, the community needs to recognize is our being transparent, not just extending the contract for another 10 years or however long, but we put it out to bid. We have received, like I said, 3 good proposals from 3 good companies, and it has been transparent, and we are continuing that process now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Cruz?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to bring this discussion from a different angle. I like the concept that the RGR is local. I like the fact that they provide a lot of local money, specifically to the county. We're talking about close to $200,000 a year if you break it out over 10 years. I mean, which other company can give us $200,000 a year for 10 years? That's very few, unless you're a developer. I mean, that's the reality how the San Miguel County works. But I think that one, we did not take into consideration that they provide local benefits such as tax dollars and insecure and real property and just other ways of benefits that the county can provide. 2, I don't like the fact that that the management team or the administration is offering suggesting that we enter into a negotiation with Recology, and then if everything else fails, then we can go into green waste. To me, if that's the direction the board wishes to go, then bring it back to the board of supervisors and let us figure out some other options. But I just don't like the fact that right off the bat you're excluding RGR, which happens to be the local vendor. I do have some real issues on that perspective, and in fact, I won't vote for a motion if it says give it to Recology, and then if that all fails, goes green waste. I can't support that motion, so I'll say it on the public right now. But I also believe that we did not give RGR an opportunity to make their presentation in terms of local benefits to the community. We throughout the whole entire transmittal says negotiations, which basically means to me that whatever the rates are right now, those can be negotiated. Yes, they're not the lowest bidders. I totally understand that. I get that. But in the process of if Recology fails, then everything needs to be brought back to the table for discussion and renegotiation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Medina?
Listening to Supervisor Dela Cruz, I agree 100%. I will look at Recology as the top pick and move to RGR as my second. And if Mr. Dela Cruz decides to make a motion, I would second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members?
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Rivas?
The recommendation from Hollister, was it to move forward with negotiations exclusively with Recology? And if that should fail, they would come back and revisit the issue? Or to...
Mr. Chair? It was Green Waste would be their second.
So it's very similar to what's proposed
staff.
here.
Mr. Chair, if I may, so the 3 agencies, the executive committee met, and we more or less mirrored our staff report. So that way we gave one message out to each jurisdiction. So basically it was I believe they move forward with this exact recommendation.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we start negotiation with Recology, and if everything else fails, then introduce RGR.
Second.
Madam Clerk of the Board, can you do a roll call vote?
Under the
Mr.
question.
Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to recognize Supervisor Rivas first before I come back to County Council.
Okay, so, the issue I have is with exclusive, I'm okay with beginning the negotiations with Recology. I think that when I looked at the proposal and we had our meeting, there's, all three, especially when it came to Recology and green waste, they're very similar proposals, very similar in substance, as far as what they offer. I did have a lot of concern. My one concern about Recology was their diversion goals, that they were lacking. And I think that's extremely concerning to me. And that's why if we do end up moving forward with Recology, I think we need to require periodic updates about how they're, progressing to meet those goals, especially on is it the commercial the diversion rate. I think there's a huge opportunity there, and certainly haven't done enough to capture and to increase those rates. But what doesn't make sense to me is putting all our eggs in a basket without a backup plan. I understand we go through these negotiations. Should they hit a snag, do we have to start over again? What we should be advocating for is concurrent negotiations, whether it's with 1 and 2, whether that's Recology, green waste. That way, if something hits a snag, there's not going to be so much of a lag, and we could pick up right where we left off. So that's my recommendation. Whether the motion can be amended or not, I don't know.
Yeah,
and so, but obviously, working with with the city of Hollister, this whole thing comes. I view this as an effort from our entire county, working with the city of Hollister, and if they've agreed to something else already, that could be a problem.
Yeah, and one of the things, in fact, I was talking with our consultant and CEO about that particular issue just this morning, and it's absolutely vital to have protections to the agencies and the county as far as meeting the state mandates. I really expect that the liability is not on the jurisdictions, but on the provider themselves, and to reach that. And there has to be an improvement, like what you're stating. We're kind of on a little. My mind, it's a little bit of a unknown how green waste or RJR would meet those requirements as well. But I think that has to be written. Some protections have to be written within the contract, addressing that.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to say anything?
County Council.
Just to reflect what I think is intended by the motion, if the maker of the motion would like to alter paragraph 1 of the staff report, the last sentence of that would read, if the above actions are not successfully negotiated between the parties and the selection committee, would then recommend bringing the item back to each board, period, and delete the rest of that sentence. And then the last paragraph of the resolution could stop at the end of paragraph 1. It could indicate if the above items are not successfully negotiated between the parties, then the selection committee would then recommend terminating negotiations with Recology and bringing the item back to the board for further direction.
That's not my motion.
Oh.
Barbara. My motion is specifically take word for word and instead of green waste, put RGR in its absence.
Okay.
And okay, and just so the rest of us could understand what the motion is.
Okay.
Or at least me.
Substitute green waste for RJR. Okay.
Maybe everybody else understands it, that we enter into negotiations with Recology, and would it be concurrent negotiations with RJR, or if negotiations fail, that we bring it back to RJR?
Well, the motion.
Supervisor Medina, maybe you could help me.
Mr. McCarthy, can you explain the same thing you explained last night? If they come to an impasse or if...
Thank you for the question, Mr. Medina. I guess you had some late-night TV watching with City of Hollister.
I want to watch you, actually.
Yeah, well, thank you. There was a question asked about pros and cons of concurrent negotiations. It was Councilmember Clower that addressed the question, and I gave an answer that was sort of there's pros and cons to doing it. One of the challenges with doing concurrent negotiations is where you set the benchmark as to where you want to end up, because we're in a situation where all the numbers are out. So, is this like an auction? Who's got $25 a household per month? Okay, I'll match that 25, and then you just keep going until somebody says, "Oh, I won't go any lower." I mean, it's a challenge when you have all the numbers out in public. I think if we were in a situation where the numbers weren't out there, it would make it easier to do that. The advantage is clearly you can get to a point with your backup. As it was suggested by Supervisor Rivas, if you did that, you would have two side-by-side agreements. The thing that the evaluation committee shared with the selection committee was, depending on which company you pick, there's a different set of conditions. And so you're seeing the Recology recommendation with a set of conditions. Each company had strengths. Each of them had deficiencies in their proposal. And so there would have to be a set of conditions that would apply if you were to negotiate with Green Waste, if you were going to negotiate with RJR. So that's something that we were prepared to share with the selection committee. The selection committee recommended Recology, and so we put forward those series of recommendations. So I don't know, Mr. Medina, that captures what you heard last night with your popcorn and you're watching the meeting, but...
Yeah, the second question I have, since you're up there, is being Hollister already adopted the Recology, Green Waste as a backup, and if we went with Recology and RJR as a backup, and then San Juan Bautista, they will vote on that tonight or tomorrow, I believe.
Tonight.
If they come up with Recology and they come up with Green Waste, what does that do to everything else? So if there was an impasse or Recology was not able to come to terms, then would we have to go back and vet the second one, being that there's one Green Waste, one RJR, and possibly another RJR or Green Waste?
Yes, you'd have to go back through trying to, if you wanted to retain the regional agency with a single franchise agreement, you'd have to come back and essentially what happened a year ago. There was an impasse, and so there was a very good suggestion to go to an ad hoc committee. And so we had a very good ad hoc process, and there was consensus reached. You'd have to have some process to do that. An alternative could be that if there's an impasse, it's just brought back for discussion, and you don't name a backup. You just say it'll come back, and you would then decide at that point if you were going to go with the number 2 ranked, number 3 ranked, both. You could make that motion a little more generic. In either case, you still would have some level of disagreement with Hollister that would have to be worked out. It's just a question: is it right out of the gate an immediate conflict? Because if you decided to pick RGR to back up, or if you just said, "Hey, bring it back," and then you'll decide at that point who you wanted to pick.
Okay.
That
probably makes it a little less tough of a negotiation.
Yeah, stay with.
Yeah, my apologies. I have more than I thought I wanted to say. The other one was, I did hear that maybe 10 years ago, when Recology did receive the initial contract, maybe 18 months after they increased the rates, is there a way we can put a provision in the contract stating that there's some type of agreement to rate increases, but they have to be within a certain time or a certain vote or something similar to that? Because, number one, was that true that they did increase the rates after their contract was accepted, and then 18 months later they did increase the rates? And how can we prevent that from happening in the future?
Well, that's a good question. So to answer the contractual question, as you all know, probably 18 months ago, we pointed out that the current franchise agreement had a lot of problems, and so we brought you a industry standard franchise agreement. One of the things that's in there is that can't happen again. That there would be no, if whoever was picked, something happened in terms of the assumptions they made, they ended up being short on revenue, they're not going to get a correction in the rates. There's very specific cases, and they're all really about change in law. So if the law really changed, or if the county or Hollister or San Juan said, hey, we want you to do this new program. So if you directed a change. But that scenario, I don't know if it happened. Where's Phil? Maybe he can address it, but yes, sir.
Yeah,
come on up.
Go ahead, Phil.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for the question. That is not true. We signed the contract in 2008, and in the contract it stipulates a mechanism for rate increases, and they were annual rate increases, and it's a mathematical formula. It's based upon indices published by the federal government. So we did not come back arbitrarily and ask for some sort of a rate increase. We've since the beginning of the contract, we've followed that contract, and we've come before you before with an annual adjustment based upon a combination of CPI, Consumer Price Index, and the fuel index. So my answer is no, we did not come back arbitrarily for a rate increase.
So in our contract, we will be negotiating. For the next 10 years, we will know exactly what type of rate increases we would expect?
It's spelled out in the contract, exactly. Yeah, as Kevin explained, it's spelled out extensively in the contract how rate increases are adjusted.
And then the last question, since you're up there, is the increase in the businesses. There was an increase in the business charge versus the residential.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to negotiate that when we're looking at the contract to decrease those rates?
And that's part of the conditions of the recommendation that staff has put forward to you, is that we look at the residential rates versus the commercial rates. So
but at the same time, I like to keep residential rates where they're at and not change those residential rates, because this is what we're voting on with residential rates. The only thing I believe I am personally not happy with is the increase in the business rates.
Yeah, that would be dealt with during negotiations. That's what the next process is.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Supervisor Del Cruz.
I guess it's more for Kevin, more of a general question.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Phil.
Oh, okay.
I'm kind of lost right now, but Mr. Chair, we still have a motion on the table.
We still have a motion on the table.
I would like to either get it approved or deny it so that we can go in a different direction. But Kevin, my understanding is we asked for proposals. They were sealed. None of the bidders knew what the rates were. The whole world knows now. Now you're asking us to enter into negotiation, and so. I'm listening to Supervisor Medina's comments, and if we want to drop the rates, then we're not giving the other two vendors an opportunity to also sharpen their pencils and come back with some other rates. Is there a fairness in that, or am I missing the point somewhere?
I think you do get to a point in a process. So we've worked all the steps in the process. So all the steps in the RFP process, we've essentially worked all the way through them. And now we're at the point in which sort of the question's being called about picking a company. And it's really at the discretion of the three agencies how you want to affect that last piece. How do you want to go into negotiations and do your contract? And so there's a lot of flexibility around that. What's being recommended is what is typical in the industry, where you pick a company and you're going to try to negotiate the final and best deal with them. You want to keep your options open. How you structure that, whether you do concurrent negotiations or you come back and say, hey, we've reached an impasse, there's flexibility around that. The RFP allows a lot of different approaches. So there's nothing that we're talking about, and is it anything, the kind of things you're talking about are possible. There's nothing that prohibits it in the RFP. And so, as Phil said, there are the rates are all open for discussion, and that was a concern brought up by the evaluation committee. We felt like the commercial rates were too high, and there needed to be some sort of normalizing of the rates. So,
thank you. And then my last question, Mr. Chair, and Phil, I'm sorry, Kevin.
Yeah. If
the city of Hollister yesterday approved Recology with concurrent negotiation with Greenways, correct?
No, they voted for exactly the way this recommendation is written, which is Recology for exclusive negotiations, and if that fails, and that would be a decision that you all would touch. So it wouldn't be that the committee reached an impasse and just said, "Oh, we're going to Greenways." The committee, the negotiating committee, would have to come back, explain to you what the impasse was. You would give us feedback, and you'd say, "Hey, go iron it out this way," or go to Plan B, and that would be you would provide that input. And so right now, what Hollister approved was, if you get to the point of an impasse, the suggestion is then go to Green Waste. Okay. So it's not concurrent.
So my motion is continue the discussion with Recology, and if you come to a point of impasse, go with RGR. That's my motion on the table, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Can we get a vote on that, Mr. Chair?
1 second. I'm going to recognize Supervisor Medina, and then we're going to
I just have
motion.
one more question about roll-offs. I just want to be crystal clear so everybody understands. It's my understanding, and I want to make sure that I'm thinking right, is as a business owner, we can choose whoever we want on the roll-offs. Is that a correct assumption?
That's correct, and just to state for the record, the Business Council brought this concern up a year ago to the ad hoc committee, and the ad hoc committee decided in June that it was going to remain the same. So when the RFP was released in August, it recognizes that it continues to be open market. So I'm not really sure why it's continuing to be questioned. It is absolutely open market. Nothing is changing.
I'm continuing to question it because I want to be clear that everybody understands it, because there were still people that were saying, well, no, I have to go with Recology, or I have to do this, and I want to make sure on the record that people do understand that they have the option to go with the different vendor.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's absolutely the case.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, before you call for the question,
Supervisor Munzer.
I'd like to present a friendly amendment to the maker of the motion, in that we could go forward with the negotiation with Recology and not pick a second company at this time, and to have it come back to us if the negotiations fails with Recology. It comes back to this board for a decision at that time.
I'll accept that.
Okay, great. Any other comments from the board?
Just one additional comment, because I would imagine that if we do reach an impasse or if the negotiations break down, we would have to, reconvene probably with the city and with San Juan.
Yep. Yes.
And move together. Yeah.
Yep. The second has to accept that.
Oh, the second accepts the amendment?
Yes.
Sounds like we're all together on this finally. I'm going to just call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, so we're not adopting a resolution today, or because we just have the motion as far as giving direction to staff. Are we amending the resolution itself, or no?
No.
Okay, good.
Well,
We are.
What does the resolution say?
You are changing that resolution.
Okay, as I read it, as stated then.
recommendation.
So the resolution's adopted as well.
Yeah.
As part of that motion.
Yeah.
All right, so you have direction? Yes. We'll take a 10-minute break. Okay. If we could find a seat, and I'll call the meeting back to order, and we'll move on to item 18. CEO Espinoza, could you introduce it?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. At our last board meeting, your board had discussed the potential of polling for sales tax, and your board had a keen interest in what the COG polling was going to actually come out with. So I invited Mary Gilbert. I'd like to invite her up. She is a COG director, and she's going to present to your board the results of the polling for transportation within our county. And then later, the next item we'll discuss, future direction. Do we want to move forward with polling for sales tax or not? So,
great.
Thank you, Mary.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thanks for having me here this morning. I'm Mary Gilbert, Executive Director of the Council of Governments. The Council of Governments is the regional transportation planning agency for San Benito County. And we have conducted a transportation sales tax survey of San Benito County voters earlier this year. So I wanted to walk you through the methodology of our survey. We had a contract with a firm, EMC Research. They're based out of Oakland, and they've done 2 previous polling efforts for COG. And under contract, they conducted the survey as a hybrid telephone and email to web survey, and we were targeting likely November 2018 voters in San Benito County. So we were very specific that we wanted to talk to the people who would be potentially voting in the November 2018 election. Overall, they conducted 417 interviews, and that gave us a margin of error of plus or minus 4.8 percentage points. 216 of the surveys were done online and 201 by telephone. We conducted it from March 19th through March 26th of this year. And the interviews were conducted in English and Spanish by trained professional interviewers, and we were able to contact people on both landlines and mobile telephones. And when applicable throughout the survey, what you'll see as I go through some of the results, we'll compare to our previous research that EMC has done in San Benito County. Previously, we were looking at likely June 2016 voters, and we did efforts in spring of 2015 and winter of 2016. So our key findings from this effort are that traffic and road maintenance are top-of-mind issues for voters in San Benito County, and many of those voters recognize that there's a need for additional funding for transportation. We asked some general questions about trust in local officials and feelings towards taxes, and we saw there's some distrust of local officials and a general anti-tax sentiment, but voters still believe that transportation investments are important, even if it means raising taxes, and I'll show you some of the data behind that in a minute. We talked about a 1-cent sales tax measure to fund a range of transportation improvements in the county, and we saw that that is supported by over 2/3 of likely voters. And all potential measure components are supported by at least a majority of voters, with improvements to Highway 25 and local road maintenance rising to the top of voter priorities. So first, I'm going to walk you through now kind of basically generally the order of the poll as it was done. So the first questions were about the issue environment. We asked whether the folks we were talking to were commuters. And by commuters, that just means you're going to work, school, or a volunteer position outside of your home at least 3 times a week. So not necessarily commuting outside of the area, but just going somewhere on a regular basis. So we have more commuters since 2015. More people are getting out at least 3 times a week, 42% compared to 29% in 2018. I think I may have misread those numbers. I apologize. Hang on, just give me a sec. This is actually just focusing more on the commute destination. So the destination, more folks are traveling to Santa Clara County than they were in the 2015 timeframe. So with 40% compared to 26%. So that may contribute to their feelings on Highway 25. So the most important problem, we ask an open-ended question to the people taking the poll. What do you think is the most important problem facing San Benito County today? And they can say absolutely anything that they want. Education, schools, growth, traffic. And we saw that 35% responded that traffic, road repair, infrastructure, or public transit were the top of mind issues. And then another 28% said that it was growth and overdevelopment. So again, often we see that contribute. The concerns about infrastructure are really what's at heart with the concerns about growth and overdevelopment. And we also asked, do you agree or disagree that traffic in San Benito County has gotten significantly worse over the past few years? 95% agreed with that statement.
Supervisor Munzer?
I'd just like to point out one thing.
Yes.
Between the 2015 commute patterns and 2018, and even kind of addressing the 28% growth over development.
Mm-hmm.
I want to remind the public that
Can you turn your speaker on?
2015, we were still coming out of the recession.
Right.
I'm not sure what the unemployment was at, but a couple years before that, it was in the 20%. Now we're down around 4% in unemployment. So we need to be thankful that our residents have jobs again. Mm-hmm. And the bad thing is those jobs are in Santa Clara County and they're having to commute out. But at least they have jobs again. So we need to be thankful for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
You want to
Yeah,
continue,
and even in our top of mind question, only 4% of people mentioned the economy or lack of jobs being something, which is down from 14% in 2016. So we also asked about tax sentiments. So the question is, if you agree or disagree with these two statements. So the first is it is crucial to have high-quality roads and public transit, even if it means raising taxes. 70% of those respondents answered yes to that. They agreed with that statement. And that's up from, in 2016, only 62% of folks agreed with that statement. The second was taxes are already high enough. I'll vote against any increase in taxes. 51% agreed with that statement. So, people are kind of double dipping there or answering two different ways. But still, we still see that people are increasingly willing to raise taxes to fund transportation improvements, even though they're generally averse to taxes. So when you get specific about transportation, people are interested in approving things. And nearly 9 in 10 voters believe there's a need for additional transportation funding in San Benito County, and that perception of need has increased significantly since our 2015 survey effort. So we've got 72% of folks saying that there's a great need for additional funding for transportation, and that's up from only 61% in 2016 and 52% in 2015. And overall, 89% in 2018 are saying that yes, there's there's great need or some need. So once we kind of set the issue environment, we got specific into a potential sales tax measure for transportation. And I'll take a step back and just remind you that a special tax for transportation like this requires a 2/3 voter majority approval. And it also comes along with an expenditure plan that specifies how the funds will be spent. So the funds would not go into a general fund. They'd be in a specific fund for transportation, and then even more specifically for projects. So we asked this question initially. Shall the voters authorize a San Benito County Roads and Transportation Safety Improvement Plan to repair potholes and maintain roads, widen Highway 25 to relieve traffic congestion and make it safer, improve pedestrian, bicycle, and transit options, and qualify for state and federal matching funds by enacting a 1-cent sales tax, raising approximately $16 million annually over 30 years, with annual audits by an independent oversight committee. So with that question, we're trying to simulate a actual ballot question that will be on the ballot that meets all the requirements of what a ballot question would be. 71% of people said they would vote yes to approve that measure. 20% voting no, and 3% undecided. So we're starting out with 71% of folks generally approving that measure and going above that 2/3 threshold. And then we go through the components of the measure, and we found that road maintenance, Highway 25, and qualifying for matching funds are the top components of the measure that are most compelling for voters. So we read through a list of items that could be included in that transportation investment expenditure plan that would go along with the tax, and we're seeing that all of these items are above 85% of people finding that these are really important issues that would need to be covered. Maintaining roads, getting the highest support of 92%, and then relieving traffic congestion on Highway 25 just below at 90%. And some of these are may look repetitive. We talk about maintaining roads and repairing potholes, relieving traffic on Highway 25, and widening Highway 25. We really want to find out what's resonating with voters and what's resonating with people that we want to make sure that we're able to include in our expenditure plan. And then we also go through some of the information about the detailed plan, what the Highway 25 improvements would be, how matching funding would play in, and general traffic improvements. And those are all compelling. So these are all statements that support the measure. And we find that they're all very convincing to voters, that these statements get people to think that, yes, they could really support this measure. So we also do ask about opposition messaging. So we just talked about compelling themes. We also talked about we also gave some themes about why the tax measure might be wrong for San Benito County, and we look at how folks respond to our question after they get both the positive information and the opposition information. So in the center column there, that's showing after they get the positive information, our yes votes go up to 72% and no stays at 20%. It's hard to go up from 71% when you have some folks who are just going to vote no regardless. So going up to 72 is good with that positive messaging. But the opposition messaging also has an impact. The yes votes go down to 62% with a lean yes of another 5%. So still staying up above that 2/3 threshold, but just inching along there. And that's something to be really cognizant of as we move ahead. And no votes go up to 29% after hearing some opposition to the measure. So in conclusion, we can see from this data that San Benito County voters really recognize the need for transportation infrastructure improvements. And based on this poll, a 1 cent special tax measure for improvements appears feasible for the November 2018 ballot. But as I just mentioned, the measure may be vulnerable to opposition, which indicates the importance of ongoing community and stakeholder engagement and a really detailed and well-supported transportation expenditure plan that responds to the concerns of voters in San Benito County. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
Any questions from the board, Supervisor Medina?
Yes.
Last time we went to the ballot was Measure P, is that correct?
That's right.
And at the same time, did we do polling then?
We did.
And where were we then?
So that was the 2015
Yeah.
and 16 polls.
Was it done at the same exact time?
I'm trying to go back just so I can show you the. We did one in March of 2015, and then our next one was late January of 2016. And that late January was right before we had to finalize the expenditure plan to get on, because we went in the June 2016 ballot. So we got poll results, and I think we had our expenditure plan together about 2-3 weeks later. So a little bit different timing. We're a little further out from the election at this point than we were in January 2016. But still at a good point right now to be putting an expenditure plan.
What was the percentage rate?
Let me get that for you. You're asking about the poll support in 2016?
Because right now it's at 71%. Where was it?
Right, yeah. So in January 2016, we were at 67% yes, with a slightly higher margin of error. We had a 4.9% margin of error at that time. And then at the ballot, the ultimate poll, really, when voters responded, we got just shy of 60% support. The poll that we did in January 2016, we had also concerns about making sure there was a lot of outreach done and talking and making sure the expenditure plan was responsive and that people got all the information that they needed about the ballot question. So we were warned that we were showing we would get to 67% potentially, but there was a lot of work that needed.
And that's
to be
why I
done.
bring this up right now. I know we're at 71%, but there's no reason to bring the confetti and the champagne. We need to continue to outreach and continue to pretend like this is at 50%, so we can continue that
Absolutely.
force.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Actually, Mr. Chair, more of a comment is that, Mary, it was a June election, right?
It was a June election. It was
This
a
one
tough
is gonna be-
election.
We're looking at a November election,
Right.
which will have a certain percentage of more voters willing to support it. So I agree, Supervisor Medina. Let that champagne still be chill for the time being. And there's a lot of work to be done, but there are indications such as the public is frustrated and they want to see us fix Highway 25, maintain our roads. They're seeing that pressure or that sentiment is there, that we need to do something about it, and they're willing to support the 1% sales tax, and that's a good thing, and we should take advantage of it and move forward with the November election. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, from my understanding, too, kind of being on COG for a number of years and working with other counties and their transportation problems, which are very similar to our county. We're not alone in this. The state has diverted a lot of our transportation funds for state needs rather than local needs, and hence this is why we're in the situation that we're in, that we have to address road maintenance and address congestion on our major highways. Is that we have to work harder, and usually you don't pass these things on the first go around to begin with. The timing was not the greatest, taking a June election rather than a November election. And as leaders of the community, we have to work harder to convey that message. And just what we talked about at the start of this meeting is that the five of us here, the two city councils, have to get out and meet with people and convey what the plan is and listen. And, hopefully have the trust to do what is needed to be done. I'm not drinking any champagne after this thing is done. The work just begins.
Right.
So, any other comments? With that, I'll open it up for public comment. Anybody from any speaker cards? Mr. Rosati?
First, I just have a question. Mr. Medina made a remark. Is there any discussion about a county general fund vote that's going to be discussed as part of this or coming up later?
We'll come up later with that. That's probably a discussion item for our next item on the agenda.
It's for the general sales tax and business license fee.
Okay, so I guess the remarks. Okay. Well, I'll save that for then. I mean, that's basically what I wanted to kind of get to. So, anyway, I'll just say, just to back up with what Mr. Botello said, the results overall of the survey were very good, and like you said, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to keep it going, because there's the mixed messages. 70% after everything is done, you still have an approximate 70% support. But then the one of the several items in there that's kind of scary is the same people feel that 51% of them don't support a sales tax. They feel that we have enough, in their minds, when they ask to make these remarks. So then there's a couple of others, and I won't get into it. You just have to, it's there. So it's those other three remarks where the work is really difficult, and that's why a lot of effort has to go in to writing this measure appropriately from the voters or taxpayer standpoint to help overcome this. Thanks.
Thank you.
I wasn't planning to speak. I'm just going to speak from the experience of last time because I was on the committee. That you don't say that when you lose very often. You don't say you're on the committee, but I was, and we did go from 66% down to 59 point something percent in one of these polls. So, a couple of the weaknesses I think we had that we should watch for are: one, we didn't give ourselves enough time, and I think it's borderline right now if there's enough time. So if you're going to do it, you have to get into it right away. Number two, I think, as Steve mentioned, the expenditure plan is critical. I don't think we took the pulse of the voters enough ahead of time to know what was really going to be favored as far as the expenditure plan goes. From my recollection, it was COG at COG meetings deciding which projects are we going to focus on, make sure we have one in every area, et cetera. That's not good enough, frankly. You need more information from the voters, not just from, I know the COG members are aware of the voters' preferences, but you need more specific information. And we had very little grassroots. And some of you were on the committee, and you came to the committee meetings. You saw what I saw. Maybe 10 people at these committee meetings, and not much, 10 to 12 people, and not much outside of that. So there was not the feeling at all of a grassroots effort. It was the committee, which was limited, and the consultant sort of following the typical path of running a campaign. So there has to be a much broader outreach this time in order to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Good points.
Good morning. I wasn't planning on speaking either, and thank you, Scott. Scott brings up some really great points, especially the grassroots going out there. I mean, social media, it is a big topic on social media, the traffic, and what are we going to do about it? And they complain, but nobody seems to have a resolution, and then nobody wants to pay any more taxes. So how are you going to sell this to the constituents that we want them to vote on this? And you have a plan. Some people use 156, some people do 125, and if you're not going to be focusing on the road that I specifically use, they're not going to want to vote for it. So how can you focus on a lot of the roads? Another thing is, with regards to that, is what is the time period? Are we talking about collecting a tax and in 20 years we're going to do this? Or what can we do in the immediate time? So that's something that needs to be considered as well. Thank you.
Honorable Chair and members of the board, Victor Gomez with Pinnacle Strategy. I made these comments when COG rolled out this presentation, but I apologize for those that represent the county at COG for hearing this twice. But a couple of things you need to look at. Scott made the point of the timing. Timing is critical. I hate to start off my comments by saying this, but you're already late. You're already late in fundraising. You're already late in forming an independent committee outside of government to get this thing going. There's a lot of things that should have happened already. Certainly not blaming anybody. We were all on the same page. We all moved concurrently. Mary and her staff did an amazing job of getting this thing done. They hired a firm to do the public relations and community outreach work. They've, to this point, have done a wonderful job out there as well. So staff is doing a wonderful job. Outside of your role as an elected official and as a committee, potentially a committee member or somebody involved in it, it's going to be critical that you get going on this thing immediately. The committee should be formed as soon as possible, and fundraising should start taking place very soon. Looking at the crosstabs, and I know we didn't get into depth regarding the demographics of the voters. Remember that the higher propensity voter is likely going to oppose this measure. Okay, so it's going to be critical to get out the vote. GOTV is going to be critical to this measure. And if you don't get Democrats that do not tend to show up on non-presidential elections, right? If you don't get those Democrats to come out and vote on this, this measure is going to fail. And you're not going to hit the 66.6% threshold. So it's going to be critical that, as Scott mentioned as well, is that grassroots component of it. You need to get the voters to come out. You need to get them enthusiastic about coming out and voting and making sure that they support this. And I hate to say this too, but I think some of the traffic has actually helped, right? I hope nothing happens between now and November to fix the traffic. I hope it gets worse for the next 6 months, because candidly, that's really what's going to get people to vote yes on this measure. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? That I'll close the public comment, and Mr. Gomez is probably right about that. Mary?
If I could just give you a few next steps as far at the COG level that we're working on, just so the public knows. We do have our regular COG board meeting this Thursday at 3 p.m. And the board will be starting looking at a very draft framework of a transportation expenditure plan based on the results from the survey, as well as other public outreach and in community engagement that we've been doing. So folks are welcome to come to that meeting. But again, as you mentioned at your remarks this morning, we want to get out and talk to folks as much as possible. So please contact your supervisor, or they can contact the COG office if anyone would like more information. Our website is sanbenitocog.org, and we'll be posting frequently asked questions and other information about the expenditure plan there.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, this is an absolute critical measure we got to get passed. So a lot of our roads, I don't give them 3 more years on an average rainfall. I was talking with the RMA director the other day. Our pavement index is at 28. It's just really as low as anywhere you'll find. And if we get this tax measure pass, I think a lot of these projects have to be bonded. We have to go out there and put the pavement on the road and bond it and use the tax to service the bond, and also depend a lot on SB1 funding as well, and utilize those leverage funds, which would put us with an opportunity to receive that with a self-help county. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, the only thing I can add is we were here just a couple years ago making the same comments. I mean, we all can agree and come to an understanding that this is really important and a critical initiative moving forward for us. But as was stated by Mr. Gomez and by so many other people, this is an election. This is a campaign, and so what are we going to do different? I guess this is for our representatives on COG. How are we going to, how is this campaign, how is this initiative going to be much different than just a couple years ago? Because at the end of the day, we have to sell a vision and prioritize these issues in our community for our residents to vote on them. For them to, enough so they can go out and support this initiative. Because moving forward, we see a lot of the challenges here. Maintaining roads was the 63% said that is very important to maintaining roads. 68% said relieving traffic on 25 is extremely important. When I was out there campaigning for this, people were voting against it because they said that there wasn't enough investment in local roads. And so these are the challenges I think that we have to approach very differently in how we prioritize this initiative. If not, we're going to get the same results. So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes,
and those are good questions. How is it to be different this go around? And Victor was right. Time's short. It's too short almost. Conversations I've had with Mr. Rosati and Supervisor Lowe on the issue afterwards, the clarity of the ballot measure was really lacking. It was 30-something pages long or something by the time we got, done with it. And I think the voters probably were confused and hope. I'm just speculating as one member of COG. The clarity was not there with Measure P that should have been, and hopefully we'll be able to be more concise with the messaging, and people are observing that there's a definite degradation of our roads, public assets, and a need to do something with 25. It's just no getting around it. And Supervisor De La Cruz, you have anything to add?
Yeah,
Chairman.
Yeah, as a chairman, I have the fortune to have Supervisor Lowe and Steve Rosati continue to talk to me and guide me on how to go about this sales tax. But it's just not them. It's also members of the community. We've got the mayor here, who's going to be very, very instrumental in terms of social media. You got Victor, who's always gives us a little wise words, kind of laughing, word of the joke of the day or the laugh of the day. And we're going to need that because there's going to be a lot of days that we're going to struggle, and there's going to be a lot of days we're going to need that refresher. But I also sense that the timing is different. You got more people who are aware of our roads, and over and over and over, and Mario testified to this, is that the anchor to all this is going to be Highway 25. Irregardless of how we believe in 25, that's going to be the anchor. That's going to be the item that pushes the sales tax over, and also having a good expenditure plan in place. And I remember those days, Scott, when we would meet at San Juan Oaks, and there'll be 9, 10 people, and there'll be times when the consultants were all numbered members of the public, and that was bad news. We cannot afford to have days like that. We need to have the public buy into it, and that's why we're starting now to ask for help and assistance from the public. And I feel the frustration when Steve says, well, no one's going to speak, let me speak then, because he senses that this is the beginning, that we need to keep pushing the public to come and understand that we're about to put a sales tax on the ballot. And when he said, Steve, are you going to put a general sales tax, that's going to hurt us. And I was going to wait for comments on the next one, right?
Why don't we wait
yeah.
for that?
Well, I'll wait.
Soon enough.
Yes. But I feel that there's key players involved now that can change the sales tax this year, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board? If not, we'll move on to item 19.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes. First of all, thank Mary for coming presenting that. So we've been discussing with your board probably the last 5 months or so, potentially moving forward with the sales tax. We've had different meetings and discussing with you and your board. And the last board meeting, you had some reservations concerning moving forward with polling for sales tax, and you wanted to hear COG's report to see where they stood and what the polling results were. So today you just received those results, and I wanted to open up to your board on the direction you'd like us to move forward. Would you like us to move forward with polling for a sales tax or not? That's basically it. So, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Comments from the...
Yeah, so my only concern is, we could do all the polling we want, but it's only going to take us so far. Who's going to, do the work behind this initiative? I was active many years ago in helping the city of Hollister as a community member, with their sales taxes. But that was driven by the employees. It was driven by community members. Who's going to be behind this effort? That's my question, to our administration and the rest of the board. Because polling is not cheap, and it's going to, it's an investment of thousands of dollars, and whether we make that investment, what do we do with the results? How are they going to be used? So.
Mm-hmm. Supervisor De La Cruz.
My response. I say leave the sales tax, the COG sales tax alone. I would rather support some type of general sales tax in 2020 election. For right now. I want the 1% sales tax standalone for November.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I'll open it up for public comment. Give him a minute and a half.
I was going to take 30 seconds, but if you want to go a minute and a half, I'll take a minute and a half or 3 minutes. There's been a lot of comments. I know Measure P, many of us were involved. Several different reasons why it didn't pass. I think if it had been in the November election, it would have passed. But I'm actually glad it did not, because now we realize our need is much larger than what we thought it was a few years ago. It was a half cent for 20 years. This is 1% for 30 years. Part of the problem was people were asking the question, what do you mean you're going to do some safety improvements on 25? We want it widened. We didn't have an answer. Now we do have an answer. We're going to widen Highway 25. That is the number one issue. There are several people that want to be involved this year. There are still dollars left from the old committee. All we have to do is create the new committee now. There's about $5,000 in that committee to get this thing started. I do ask all of you and all council members in Hollister and San Juan Bautista to be involved. We all need to have the same message that we need to fix our roads. We do not have enough tax dollars coming in from other sources as the community thinks. And each one of us has to be out there promoting the same idea. It's time to fix our roads. It's time to stop making excuses, and only us as a community can make that change. And that's the most important part. And again, all of us should be involved, and I'm hoping the public gets involved in this effort, because if they don't, we're going to be seeing those roads fall apart, as you pointed out, Mr. Chair, in the next 3 years. They're going to disintegrate on us, and we're going to have real problems in our community. So I think we can do this. November is a good time to be doing it. And if it doesn't pass for some reason, we'll be back again, because it's very important we take care of this problem and not ignore it. Thank you. Okay. Is that a minute and a half?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, you still have time. Anyone else?
My comments I'm going to go ahead and make the comments. It doesn't sound like there's support at the board level, but I just, again, wanted to bring up money savings for you. The survey that was just completed did come up with a couple of remarks that your survey would provide as well. 65% of the voters did not have confidence that local government would properly manage the tax dollars. And it really just doesn't reflect local dollars. I mean, it's just voters feeling at the state level and at the federal level. So that's out there. So that's a tough thing when you're talking general fund versus specific fund, a specific vote, rather. And it gets into the optimism of residents at how things have been going over the years, So 49% were optimistic back in 2015, and that reduced to 28%. So either vote is going to be really, really tough. So I'm just bringing it up because I think that you, as Mr. De La Cruz stated, you put your effort into the sales tax for the roads. I think you have a lot better chance. However, if there is a feeling from the board that you want to go forth with it, that's fine. Then back to splitting it up. Then save a quarter-cent for the general fund, and then 3/4 for the roads, if that's the direction, if you do feel that you want to go that way. And I do support what the mayor said, that things are better now, that the first one failed. But I have to say, Measure P did damn good. When you consider everything against it, in June and all the demographics, and I've learned so much listening to Victor and the results of the survey to kind of understand what goes into this. And I think it's just kind of nice to know, if not putting pressure on Victor or whoever, but can comment, why did we do so well, back in June for Measure P? And when I think about it, I just think there's only about maybe 2-3 areas that, we learned that if we were to hold it in June again, and fix those 2 or 3 things, looking at what happened with Measure P, I think it would work. I'm not saying to go for a June vote. I'm just making a comment that it was just so darn close. It was very frustration, a lot of frustration there. Frustrating to just come up 6 points short. But look how close it came. That's what I'm looking at, and it was great. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll bring close to public comment, and the direction that staff is looking for guidance is whether to have a procurement of polling services in connection with the county-related ballot measures, possibly being a sales tax, a general sales tax, as well as a business license tax. And my gut feeling is not to do it at this point in time, in the fact that I would hate to have a sales tax running up against a transportation tax. You run into the risk that, heck, I don't want either one of them, and it will confuse the transportation tax, or have there would be confusion between the 2 taxes. And also, at this point in time, I don't know if we have enough information put together to really pull on a business license tax. We need a little bit more work on that, and information even at this board level. That's my feeling. Supervisor Medina?
Well, I pose this question. I always look at the carrot at the end of the day. So hypothetically speaking, if we were to proceed with a 1% general sales tax, what revenue would come to our county?
Well, if I recall, we've had a few presentations. It's approximately about $2 million in the general fund annually, approximately, give or take. And obviously there is a great need from a safety perspective. We have a new jail coming that's being built. We have additional staff we need to staff. We have, there's quite a few areas that we need to address, as well as salaries and quite a few other things. So with that being said, $2 million is not a lot of money either, but it's something. But at this point, we also have a bigger issue with roads, and I think Supervisor Botello kind of hit the nail on the head, so to speak. If we have 2, do we lose that one as well? And that's a big concern that I think even administration has as well. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Any direction?
I move to proceed no further.
Second.
Proceed no further, dealing with the ballot measure for November 2018 with the sales tax and a business license tax.
Okay, and you second?
Yeah.
Just for clarification, do you want the staff to continue to explore a business license tax for ballot in November, or scrap that effort as well?
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Munzer?
I thought we gave staff direction to come back with a business permit and what that would look like, which is just recovering the cost of us doing business and issuing
fee. Yeah, and so for clarity, a fee would be just whatever the work is being done. That's what we can move forward with. If it goes beyond that, it has to be addressed through a vote of some sort. Yeah.
So my understanding was we gave staff direction to come back with us with a business fee.
Okay.
And what that looked like.
All right.
So.
And if you want, you can go ahead just to reiterate that if the board wishes to give us that direction, it'd be fine too today.
All right. That clears things
clear.
up. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. We'll move on to item 20.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is out of our RMA office. Your board had requested an update with regards to growth management. So I've asked John Gerton here, our RMA director, to give a quick, brief update on this. John?
Not so much an update, similar to the last item, asking for direction. I believe it was at your last regular board meeting. The request was to agendize for this board meeting a discussion about a growth management ordinance. Obviously, we couldn't put together an ordinance that quickly. So, there's a lot of different ways that a growth management ordinance can be drafted. There's a lot of different issues that can be covered, whether you want to just cap at a certain number, keep it at a percentage of growth, whether or not you want to look at different planning areas within the county or have it county-wide. Do we want to exempt certain areas like South County? Those are all things that need to be considered. Not only that, but this is directly tied to the general plan, and we need to make sure that we're in compliance with what's in the general plan, specifically the housing element, and make sure that we're not going to restrict growth in a way that's going to prevent us from meeting our housing goals, which would then put federal funding at risk for the county. So there's a lot that goes into developing an ordinance like this. So I'm looking for direction from your board on which direction you'd like to go with this, if you would like to pursue this at this time. And then if it is the desire of the board to move forward with this at this time, my recommendation would be to make this part of, or to consider this part of the general plan implementation, which I think it's no secret we haven't done well at up to this point. We were planning on coming to the board as part of the budget development process with a recommendation for general plan implementation and a strategy for general plan implementation, and hiring a consultant to assist with that, and what portions of the general plan implementation we could get done next fiscal year. We could wrap that this growth management idea into that strategy and take something else out that we were going to put in. And then we could get that done faster if that's the desire of the board. We can actually come back with that strategy rather than waiting for the budget development process. We could come back with that probably by the end of next month.
Okay, very good. Supervisor Munzer, you asked for this to be on the agenda.
I believe I asked for this to be agendized. There's several things going on, one of which is the growth in the city, which we have no control over, and the growth outside in the unincorporated areas. And the view that people look upon this growth as causing deficiencies in our infrastructure, i.e. the roads. And so many people have sat there and said, well, why don't we just institute a moratorium? And I guess my question kind of right now is a moratorium that is not put on us by the state, a state agency, just we decide not to have any growth. Is that legal? Is that an option? And if nobody knows, then maybe we can have that addressed at some point, because that is thrown out there many times. I don't know if the rest of you have received emails. I have, that people sit there and say, just do a moratorium until Highway 25 is fixed. Of course, not stated how Highway 25 is going to get fixed, but so I would like to have that addressed. The other issue is, as these projects come forward, is the staff's understanding that this board wants those projects fast-tracked or not? And I guess that's a question that this board needs to answer. Do we want these projects fast-tracked? There's many projects in my district that are in the pipeline that are getting approved. We had one just approved the other day at the Planning Commission. And I don't think we are addressing, either through development agreement or some mechanism, all the infrastructures that we have and that these additional houses are causing. And it's, from what I'm hearing, it seems like staff is being proponents of the development. And if a planning commissioner tries to voluntarily get additional concessions from the developer, they're being told, no, we can't do that. And I don't understand why. Why can't, if it's voluntary, why can't we get additional benefit for the county and the community from these developers? Why are they being told at planning commission meetings that they can't do that? I'm not happy hearing that. So we either need to address the rate of growth or we need to address the benefit to the community that these projects are bringing, because they are causing trouble and they're causing infrastructure trouble. And that has been consistent. From this diocese, I've had let it be known what my feelings are towards out-of-town developers. We cut them benefits, big benefits, and then they turn around and sue us over some other fee that they have to pay. And that has been consistent with out-of-town developers. Anytime we try to get them to help us address our infrastructure issues, they cry poor, they cry they don't have to, they cry whatever. And I'm tired of hearing that. So either we need to have some mechanism to have these infrastructures dealt with, or we need to slow down the growth. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Medina?
Yeah, I apologize to put you on the spot there, Supervisor Munter. But do you know what the growth rate is? And do you know, in looking at 2015 up to 2018, how many new houses or how many new permits were pulled?
John, help me. The actual number in the unincorporated area, I believe, is less than 100 building permits.
Yes, in 2015,
Pardon?
in 2015, there was 29 permits for Santana Ranch and 38 for Ether. That was in 2015. In 2016, Santana Ranch had 78, Ether had 27. 2017, Santana Ranch had 69, Ether had 18. Year to date, Santana Ranch has 22, Ether has 4. So we're below 100.
Supervisor Medina,
100.
do you know how many are in the pipeline?
I'm not talking about the pipeline. I'm talking about. I'm asking. I asked you a question, and you did not know that.
I answered it.
And you didn't know it.
I answered it. I said less than 100.
Well, so you think
what your numbers
you think
bear
less
out.
than you think less than 100 is an issue?
No, but having 3,000 in the pipeline and in one district going to be impacting one road is a potential problem.
So, and that's what we're referring to as a certain situation. We're not referring to everything as a whole. It's a certain area. That's what you're
Mr.
referring
Medina,
to?
why were you so opposed to a reimbursement agreement when a project was in your district, and you are
and you didn't support that one either. So for the record,
I don't want to get into an argument type of discussion.
Well, it's not an argument, Chair. He asked me a question. Why did I oppose it? Because once again, I'm trying to stop in the very beginning with the general amendment change. When you change a general amendment plan, which we spent millions of dollars on, that's why I'm opposed to it. When we're talking about a moratorium or we're talking about slow growth, what that does is it brings in a bad taste for potential people coming into this town. When I say people, I mean businesses. That doesn't sound good for businesses coming in here, and that's what I'm talking about.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I have a couple comments, and I think that obviously we talk about growth. Politics is a business where it's very reactionary, right? We always react in different ways. And growth is, we have a housing crisis in this state. When you have two gubernatorial candidates, leading candidates in Newsom and Villaraigosa calling for the construction of 3.5 million homes between now and 2025, that is significant growth. And we have a housing crisis that was made possible because of local governments, because we haven't built our fair share, And so the question of moratoriums and no growth, it's not an option. And so it's incumbent on us working with our cities to decide how we're going to grow, where we're going to grow. Because when you look at the rate of growth in the county, it's been extremely low. Do the kind of numbers warrant a growth management? I was the only supervisor at the time, I think it was 2011, that I voted against the removal of our growth, our management ordinance. And I did so because of stuff like this. I knew was going to happen. The one leverage we had as a county government to be able to manage our growth rate, we eliminated. And here we are today talking about reinstituting, a potential management ordinance. So I think, this decision has to be driven by data as far as our current growth rate. It's hard to look in the future. That's why I think when we talk about the potential development on 25, everyone's has to be given due process. And the merits of that project will come up, and we'll have the opportunity to vote up and vote no or yes, when the time comes. But that time isn't now. But certainly making sure that we have a fair process in our county government, make sure we get the reimbursements we need is important, to have that in place. But moving forward, I think that this is a decision that needs to be driven by data. Certainly, this is when it comes down to grow to growth issues and development. It's always going to be controversial. But what do the numbers say? And so certainly we have infrastructure issues, and looking how we can work together. I mean, obviously we have to navigate through this general plan that's going to be flawed in any which way. Whoever looks at the document may like aspects of it, and there's some aspects that we don't like. And so certainly making sure that we're doing the right thing for our community as a whole and for our county as a whole, working with the city of Hollister, is extremely important. And so the last thing I would hate for to happen is imposing some kind of moratorium or taking a policy course that could certainly lose our competitive advantage as a county. And so, those are just some brief comments I had. Sure, thank you.
I'm going to come back to Supervisor Munzer.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear, I am not proposing a moratorium. Okay, but I've received emails, phone calls, talking to people, and people have thrown that out there. And when I say I don't think it's legal, I've been told that, well, other cities have done it. So that's what I want clarification from staff. Is a moratorium legal? Is it an option? And it doesn't have to be answered today, but I would like it answered at some point at this board level. Thank you.
Thanks. Supervisor De La Cruz?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's worthwhile to look at what Supervisor Munzer wants to do. Let's look at it, come back to the board. Supervisor Medina is correct, and we have had under 100 units approved. But I'll tell you something, members of the public, doesn't matter how many units, all you do is approve one unit, they're up in arms because of our infrastructure. And I think it's warranted that we look at it and see what's in the pipelines and see what we're about to approve. I'm okay with that. That's our job. As Supervisor Rivas said, gather the information, gather the facts, and make intelligence decisions that can affect our community. And let's not forget, gentlemen, we got a sales tax that we're about to take to the public in November. And if the public has a perception that we're just going to approve more housing permit, that's going to hurt our sales tax. That would hurt it. So I think it's to our advantage to bring it back and to talk about it and see where we're at from a global perspective. And Supervisor Medina might be correct, Supervisor Munzer might be correct, but we don't know yet today. But I'll tell you one thing. Members of the public, they look at us as just approving housing every day. And if we continue to give them that reason, this sales tax is going to lose. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'm going to take my crack at it now. It's kind of interesting listening to these different perspectives, and this is a conversation I think we need to have. I've been concerned about the procedures at the planning office, and I think our RMA director is recognizing that. And the first thing we got to do is, have qualified individuals to evaluate those procedures and the process in which an application goes through. being a member of LAFCO, COG, and on this body here, it seems like at times it's completely upside down. You know, the other day we had a LAFCO meeting, and the applicant had a piece of land that's in the Williamson Act, and there was, you know, a controversy whether it should be automatically taken out or what do you do with it? And it's at the end of his development process. It should be at the start of the development process that those questions are ironed out. And we've seen that more than once. Now, you know, Supervisor Medina is right. We haven't had a lot of growth in the county. We really haven't. But what should be concerning is that we have a good number of developments that have been approved and are in the pipeline. I mean, to the tune of not hundreds, but thousands of units. I met with a developer that wants to put in a mirror image of Ridgemark to the south. And here, this morning, we approved a water conservation ordinance for a CSA south of Ridgemark. And do we have the resources? And we keep approving these developments, and I have concerns that the market, you know, could dictate that instead of pulling 24 permits, hey, I'm going to pull 500 permits right now, and we don't have the, you know, we're getting in trouble. But that goes back to our process and procedures and you know, moving a project through. You know, I was concerned with our general plan with the community study areas. I don't think this county has the means, and nowhere in the future will have the means to service a development on the northern edge of our county or to the west in my district, west of San Juan Bautista. And those are community study areas, and those aren't entitlements. They were never meant to be entitlements. There has to be quite a bit of general plan implementation and changes to allow that to happen, but the perception's there by you know some folks looking at it. I think we need to prioritize our commercial nodes ahead of residential type of projects, but with the influx of so much work down there, it's hard to get that to the top. Should we have a moratorium? I don't think we're at that point, but we should have a systematic approach as far as how these projects are moved, to the permitting. I mean, issuing building permits, and making sure that the infrastructure is addressed. Our affordable housing ordinance is done. I'm not happy with the fact that we don't have that requirement in place today yet, and we got guys, coming through the application process. If there's any justification for a moratorium, it's just because we don't have that requirement in place, as well as making we just approved our general impact fee study, so that's a little bit better, but that's my feeling about it. And we do need to work with the city, because it's just a small area that we're talking about where residential growth is to occur. And a lot of the growth that has occurred in the city was permitted a long time ago, and now they're just building it out. Yeah. So that's my observation. Thanks. John, you have any words of wisdom?
Yeah. Let's see what I can do with that. So I think you're exactly right that there's I've mentioned this before. There's kind of a lack of foundational structure in some of our processes. Planning is definitely one of those areas. One of the first things I was told when I got here is we need to start treating everybody the same, and that every application that comes through needs to be treated equally and given the same due process, and not, I know this person or that person did this or however it was done. That we need to have a standard process. So part of what we're dealing with is we don't have those processes in place. Not only that, but a lot of these projects have been in for a long time. So right now, to Supervisor Munzer's comment, it may seem like staff is fast-tracking these projects, but a lot of these fast-track projects have been in the pipeline for 10-plus years. And now we're getting a lot of pressure to regenerate or rejuvenate some of these projects and get them moving through the process, primarily because the housing market is booming right now. So there's interest on the development side, at least, to get some of these projects going again. So it's not that staff is trying to fast track anything. It's if anything, it's an attempt to improve the customer service, and the customer service is for everybody. It's on the applicant side, it's on the supervisor side, the community side. We're trying to improve that service for everybody. So there is no direction to staff to fast track anything. We're trying to take things through thoughtfully. It is difficult when things came in before and because for whatever reason weren't thoroughly thought through before, and they've been sitting on the shelf for 10 plus years, and they're not complete applications, but we've never communicated with the applicants what the incomplete portions of their applications are. And so now years later, we're trying to fix that with them. Sometimes it's coming up at planning commission meetings. I don't know specifically what the issues were that Supervisor Munzer mentioned, but I know that things are coming up, and it's not optimal, and we do need to build those processes in order to make sure that that's improved for the future. Also, we're going to have to come back and we're going to have to revise ordinances because right now, just simple things like our standards for infrastructure and for roads. Our standard is a one-size-fits-all, and it's really difficult for developers to develop to that because the standards are so broad and really is just, if you're going to build a road, it has to be this. Well, what's good for a rural area is not necessarily good for a more type of suburban or urban type development. So we have to have that flexibility, and right now we're doing that with the discretion of the county engineer, and we're kind of looking to what the city of Hollister has in place so that we have some guidance, and the county engineer has some comfort level that we're approving something that at least fits the residential design in the area so that we're not so far removed from what the city of Hollister is approving. So that's the stuff that we're working on. We're trying to weigh all of that with workloads. That's part of why this discussion is coming up, because we do have a lot of these projects. Staff is burdened with a lot of just current planning. I don't really have staff in-house who have long-range planning expertise. This is more of a long-range planning endeavor. This cannabis ordinance, general plan amendment, pre-screen ordinance. There's a number of things, even just doing the fee study. They've been waiting for my staff to get back to them on the fee study because we just don't have the time to get to all of that. So things will have to be taken off of people's plates in order to address this issue in a timely manner for you.
Okay, we'll have to keep that in mind. As Supervisor Medina?
One quick question. If you don't have the answer, you can email it to me. Right now, I know Santana Ranch is permitted. So is San Juan Oaks. What else do we have in the pipeline besides those two?
Oh, we have Fairview Corners. Bluffs was just approved by the Planning Commission.
And the Bluffs was 260?
I think it's less than 200.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was
Sure.
190.
It's about
290?
90.
Oh, less than 200, okay.
Right.
And then Fairview was how many?
Fairview Corners, I don't remember off the top of my head how many homes.
That was another 200.
200? 250?
Right. Then we've got the...
And what else do we have?
The Lima project south of Ridgemark. And that one's, I think, a little over 1,200.
Okay.
To 100.
Brigantino that was approved.
And Brigantino was approved
Briggs.
last year, yeah.
Close to 2,000 now.
I'm just on to write it down.
Yeah.
So Briggs was how much?
Brigantino, I think, was also right around 200.
200?
Maybe 100.
And the project across the street, on the other side of the
Faye
south
Bennett.
side?
Faye Bennett, yeah.
Yeah, Todd Deutschers.
Yeah.
That was
Well,
back
I want to make sure we get all this on record.
98, I think,
90,
yeah.
100.
100?
You guys are taxing my memory.
Is it possible to get a, when you get back to the office, or
Sure.
give me just a breakdown of everything that we have so I can put it on social media and let people know these are the ones that
The big
could,
ones.
have permits out there?
Sure.
There's no permits issue on any
Okay,
of these
so-
other projects. They have just been approved projects.
So they can pull
Projects,
permits
yeah,
when they
they have
want, correct?
And some of one of those, the Lima, is in the application
It's
stage.
just in the
So,
application.
so Lima, the 1,200 hasn't been approved whatsoever?
And Fairview.
No, they just submitted an application.
Okay, so then I guess what I'm after here is, in order for this to go any further,
What's ready for construction?
it comes to the board for approval?
It would go
No.
through the planning commission.
And then from the planning commission, the board still has the option or not to
It depends
not
on
approve?
whether or not they are appropriate with their zoning, or whether they need a general plan amendment that would determine whether it comes to the.
So that brings me back to my question, is if they needed a general plan amendment, we as the board has the right to say no.
Yeah.
Am I correct on that? So that's what I'm after when we're talking about a moratorium, or the word, and I know you didn't say that, Jerry, a moratorium or a slow growth. The buck stops here. So we have the ability to do this without, a certain, and the reason I bring this up is because everyone I've spoken to, I know growth is the issues with all these people, but I'm trying to protect businesses coming here when they hear the word of slow growth. That's all I'm after. I want to make sure we understand.
And I would concur with that, Supervisor Medina. But what I'm hearing is that some of the applicants that have gone through the process, when we've asked them to help us with our issues, they have pushed back and said, no, I don't want to, I don't have to. The traffic study says I don't have to do X, and even though we need X done, and I want to get the message out there that if the developers are not willing to help us with our issues, then this may be an option. We may just either, I don't think we can shut it completely down, but we may definitely slow it down. And so they need to come to the table and understand they need to help solve the issues that our constituents are asking to be solved.
But that can be written into a development agreement?
Yes.
Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So we have the authority to write that development agreement. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
So that's what I'm trying to say, is the entire process where if it's in black and white, and I always bring it in black and white, just like Supervisor Bertello and I were able to stop Santana Ranch for a small period of time because they didn't put up that stoplight. That's what I'm just trying to say, is we're at fault. We have to make sure that the DA, the development agreement, is in black and white so we can enforce it. That's what I'm after.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments from the board? If not, I'll open it up for the public comment.
Yes, Scott Fuller.
Thank you, Chairperson Botello and Board Member Scott Fuller from San Juan Oaks. So, I had those same numbers that Supervisor Medina came up with to show that there's not a crying need for this. I hate to hear the moratorium thrown out there, and I understand you're not suggesting it, but you're saying it. So let me bring up another issue. So you talked a lot about transportation, sales tax for transportation. You've got a regional transportation plan that is it approved, or it's a draft, going to be approved. That transportation plan relies in many ways on developer traffic impact fees. The total local money in that transportation plan is about $500 million. Of that $500 million, $263 million is traffic impact fees. which represents 20% of the grand total, which includes everything, state, federal, local, etc. You're hoping with your sales tax measure, which I support, to raise about $450 million over 30 years. The Regional Transportation Plan relies on $263 million over the next 22 years. So on the one hand, you're talking about the need for infrastructure and transportation. On the other hand, you're talking about measures right now that would pretty much preclude that and will put a huge hole in your regional transportation plan. I must say I'm a little frustrated in that when these growth issues come up, and I know it's an emotional issue, I know you hear from constituents all the time, but all these issues just all of a sudden come to top of mind apparently and get thrown out. And it is not a well thought out discussion, frankly. I agree with Supervisor Rivas, who said we got to use the data. We have a general plan. Also, there seems to be a lot of buyer's remorse over the general plan, I notice also. But we have a general plan that's not that old. I don't see how you can, when you start talking about these things, just sort of say, well, the general plan, yes, we agreed to all these different land uses, but now we're going to throw those out. So I will say then, in conclusion, I would hope the last time you did this, you came up with a number of 60. It wasn't you, it was a prior board probably. Total of 60 units could be built in the entire county per year. That was a 1% growth cap. No development could get more than 30. That was the last time you had this type of measure. With that kind of restriction, you're not going to get any master plan communities. You're going to get smaller, 5, 10 units here and there. They can't do anything for infrastructure, practically speaking. You can't ask them to. You wouldn't ask them to. It's not feasible. The only kind of projects that can do beneficial infrastructure are master plan type projects. Okay. And so I'll conclude with that.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Supervisor Munzer has
Scott, before you sit down. Since you're up there representing San Juan Oaks.
Yes.
Your project is actually approved, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that's another...
that was mentioned earlier. So San Juan Oaks is 1,084
San Juan
units.
Oaks was... Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
It's actually, it's one...
I thought we had forgotten about it. Okay.
It's not 1,200, it's 1,084.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, thanks.
But that's 55 and older also.
Okay, anyone else from public?
Victor Gomez.
I was hoping the chair could grant me 10 minutes. I'm kidding. Full disclosure, Victor Gomez, Pinnacle Strategy. Just full disclosure, I do represent a few developers here in the community. I'm still a little shocked that we're having this conversation. I'm not going to lie to you. Supervisor Rivas just brought up the point of legislation that's going through that's going to force communities to build. You're not going to have a choice. You have to build houses. I know people hate that. I know candidates that are using it as a platform to run for public office. I'm going to stop. I'm going to have a moratorium. I'm going to slow down building. What the heck does that even mean? I don't even know what that means. I understand there's opportunities. People run for public office. You got to say things. Understand there. Been there, done that. But as Supervisor Rivas brought up, you're going to have mandates coming from the state to do these things. Hollister just realized that. They brought it up late last year. They said, it was pushed by a certain leader in the community and said, we're done with this. We want a moratorium. We want a slow growth, blah, blah, blah. We want to do those things. But then the state came out and the state said, no, you're not. HCD sent a letter to the city of Hollister and said, you're not going to have a moratorium. Sorry. And if you do, we'll decertify your housing element, and we're going to not give you STIP funding. We're going to stop funding coming to your community if you want to have a moratorium or even a growth cap lower than 166 units per year. Okay? So, sure, you could go ahead and have that conversation, but at the end of the day, the state's going to come in and they're going to tell you what you probably don't want to hear. Let's not forget, 8 years ago, okay, in 2010, some of you were in office back then when I was in office, and we were begging developers to build. Nobody was building. Hollister did not have one home go up in 8 years, and we were doing no building at all. What did we do collectively? We waived impact fees. We told developers, please come build houses. And now here we are 8 years later saying, shove it, get the hell out of our community. Right? We need to probably be a little bit more consistent in what we're saying out there in the community, because as we're having these discussions, think about what Supervisor Medina brought up, business, right? The more you use that, the less. I've looked at other franchises to open up here in Hollister, and the first thing I hear from corporate is, what are all these talks about a growth management plan? What are all these talks about a moratorium? If you pass a moratorium, we're not going to give you that franchise. We're not going to allow you to open. So think about some of those things. And one last thing, to Scott's point, for example, I'm just going to use 156. 156 has projected traffic impact fees funding it. So if you stop pulling building permits, where are you going to get that revenue to fund 156?
Thank you.
Good morning, Ellie Salinas, County resident, chairman and supervisors, and I was not planning on speaking, but thank you, Victor, because Victor brings out some really great points. I think what is really happening with your constituents out there and the city of Hollister is that there is misinformation being placed out on social media intentionally. So it gets people riled up and starts to get this, we don't want any more people in town, we have too many houses, we have the roads, and yes, I am very fortunate, I don't have to commute. I do use 25 and I use 156, and I have to decide what hours I'm going to be going out of town and what hours I'm going to be coming into town so I don't get caught in that traffic. You can't stop growth. You can't come into a town, come into a community and set your roots and now say, I'm building a wall and I don't want anybody else coming in here. Growth is happening, it's progress. How are we going to invite businesses to come to this area if you're going to tell them that we're not going to have the housing for them? Right now, we are below the growth rate, and we need to work with the developers, we need to work with our constituents to get the information out there that we are actually below the growth, and we need to get people to help with whether it's going to be a tax measure that we can try to get them to convince them to try to fix the roads. But you can't stop housing. You can't, not legally without having some justification, and the county doesn't have that.
Okay. Oh, can you make sure you fill out, ma'am, yes, make sure you fill out one of those sheets for the clerk of the board, just so we have a record.
I think I've been called out here, and I'll give you my view of growth as a council person, a person that gets outvoted 4-1 when the discussion comes up in the city. I'm not anti-growth. Matter of fact, I've been in the construction business for 30 years. I've seen communities develop. I've seen them do it the correct way. I've seen them do it the bad way. We are going down the wrong path. I always have a good chuckle when the state says you need to build because we are growing and we want you to build the houses for us. And then they say, by the way, you have to fix the roads too on your own. You have to build the schools on your own. And yes, it's not enough impact fees to cover those costs, but we really don't care because we want more people living here. We want you to pay for it all. It's the wrong path. A moratorium is not the answer. Out of control growth is not the answer. I say this over and over and over again. We need to slow down, figure out what we want to become so we can make sure we do it right. We have new people moving into our community and 6 months later complaining about our community. That is not very smart. That is when you start to realize you're doing some dumb growth. We want people to move here because they love our community, they love the environment here, and they're proud of our community. By being a cheap place to move to, is one of the worst things you can do. I was for more growth several years back until one development came up in between city and county. We know these pockets, these islands. And I asked that we made sure that if that community was going to be built, that we should have a safe passage from that community to the downtown, or at least to the school that was a few blocks away. No, we didn't want to hurt the feelings of the developer at the time. We felt they were good people and we should approve this project. If you go see that community right now in the morning, you will witness young children walking to school in the dirt or walking on the road. That is bad planning. We need to stop making these dumb mistakes. We need to understand what we want to be. I don't think the county and the city can both be areas where we're just building like crazy. I'm a believer if you're going to build, you build within a city. County is more rural, or it becomes a city. We're creating a major problem for ourselves that in a few years it's going to explode on us. I don't mind senior communities, and I don't mind affordable housing projects. But we need to be smart about what we're doing. We need to step back, all of us, take a breath, and do it right.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
Good afternoon, board members.
Good afternoon.
Got low. I think we have all decided that this issue is definitely emotional. I just really want to impress on the board that, growth management starts with your general plan. And our general plan is truthfully growth-inducing. A quick fix for some of these problems would be like looking at the special study areas, looking at the allowable level of service for roads, move it from D back up to C, and just envisioning what our community should look like. Development agreements had their place in the past. If we move forward, I think we have to look at the criteria of those development agreements. What was brought up is the traffic and the impact fees, but those development agreements that we have right now basically freeze the amount of money. So every home that's going to be built under a development agreement, we're going to lose $5,000 in traffic impact fees. So I think there's a lot of work, a lot of things we can do without using the word moratorium, because obviously that's an emotional word. But the county, their planning commission, and the board of supervisors, maybe if we had a joint meeting and sat down and talk about some of these issues and all get on the same page. We have brand new staff. Staff is definitely overworked. They've got a huge backlog, and maybe we just need to clear the air and move forward in a positive light. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll close the public comment. And, one of the things that, that you hear, especially during an election period of time when the elections are getting a little bit warmer, so to speak, is, the lack of the perception out there of a plan. And I truly do believe, the county does have a plan. We're not overheating with growth, but we got to still maintain a plan, evaluate our plan, and adjust our plan at times. And I think Supervisor Lowe had a good suggestion as far as, maybe at some, after the budget that we have a meeting with the planning commission and and planning staff more towards the end of the summer, that we should take a look at our process and what is happening in the development arena and what problems and challenges we have and come up with solutions. that's kind of my thought. But I think it's important that we evaluate this further, especially our process, and so developers that we're developing the right way and going forward in the right way in partnership with the city as well. Any other thoughts?
I guess my final comments would be I concur with you, Mr. Chair, and Supervisor Lowe, in that it would be an excellent idea to have a joint meeting with the Planning Commission, hash out how we want to proceed with growth, what that means. So the Planning Commission also understands where we're coming from, because I hear they don't understand what we want, and also allow staff to, be engaged and to hear from us how we feel going forward. Because I do want to, when I was elected and took office in 2011, I led the charge in getting rid of the growth management ordinance, PERGI, and all the things that were restrictive to growth. Since that time, and instead of seeing appreciation from the outside development community, they sued us because we didn't remove enough restrictions from them, and that just soured me on this. So again, I want to emphasize, because I know how things leave this meeting, and we're being accused of saying things that we didn't say. I want to emphasize again, I am not proposing a moratorium, but I do want clarification on whether that's an option, because I kept being told over and over that is an option. We should just put out a moratorium. So I want that clarification from staff. And this whole idea is to send a message to the development community that if they want to develop here, and we're not against them developing here, but they have to help us solve the problems, not just add to them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right. I'm going to say,
Just for clarification, so after summer, we'll come back and meet with you. I'll work with RMA staff, and we'll agendize an item, and we'll invite the Planning Commission to that meeting.
I'm thinking like August or so, September, when you're ready to kind of. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, I have no problem with that. We have to keep in mind we've done this in the past. We've done it many, many times, meeting with the Planning Commission, having stakeholder groups, and so what's going to be different? We've done this before. We've been down this road before, and I have no problem with it. But let's clearly define what our goals are and what we're going to seek to accomplish. So.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I want to give this enough time for staff to work on, and I don't think anyone's mentioning or a feeling that we need a moratorium, but I think we need to review our processes and see how some of these projects are be built out. I think that's what's needs some clarity. Supervisor De La Cruz?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and I think we're all on the same page too. From my perspective, what scares me the most is what's in the pipelines. I mean, we're talking what? I don't know. The last number I heard, 2,000, 3,000. I don't know. I don't know what the number is.
About 4,500.
And that's a time consideration. And how do we equate that into this discussion? Because Supervisor Rio is correct. In fact, Supervisor Patel and myself have been a board member for 13, 14 years already, and we must have had 3, 4 of these meetings together. And at the end of the day, we basically nothing gets solved, or if we do, this is the idea we're going to do, and then 5 years down the road, depending on economic conditions, we're at it again. And so somehow, John, you got to take the time factor in consideration too. Is how do we do it? At one time, we said this is how we can allocate 100 units per year, but yet we're still here today. I don't know what the answer is, and I know someone, Marty Richmond, said that. Sometimes you got to play a smart you take that into consideration. If someone's going to delay a project for 3 or 4 years, speculating that the economy will get good, then I'll start pulling permit. Maybe that's of value to them. Maybe they can start giving something back to the community instead of just paying the impact fees. I mean, we talk about, giving us land for schools, giving beyond what is it's on the bottom line. You just got to give for impact fees. That discussion needs to occur too now, because we got to start planning. And again, it's a word that we throw around, and it's usually at every election time. Smart growth. Better planning. Maybe it's time for us to talk about how do we define those words together, not just the county, but also the county and the cities too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Should we break for lunch? Supervisor Medina doesn't want to, but
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Can we at least do the last one, being that Kevin and they're sitting out there waiting to be called upon?
Real quick. Yeah. Well, I don't like breaking for lunch. So go ahead, Kevin. Let's go.
That's too funny.
My wife has me on a diet, too.
Well, thanks for hearing us before lunch. Hopefully this will be a pretty quick one. This agenda item is in response to a complaint that a concerned citizen gave at the last regular Board of Supervisors meeting in regards to a AMR ambulance crew in San Juan Bautista parking illegally. We were requested to come and bring this item before the board and have prepared a letter if the board so chooses to send to AMR that we would like you to review and either agree to sign and send or not. But in the meantime, between this resident complaining and this meeting, there have been some steps that have already been taken, and I have Chris Mangano, our EMS coordinator, here to give you a very brief update on what has already occurred.
Okay, Chris.
Good afternoon. The day prior to the board, the previous Board of Supervisors meeting, I was contacted by the manager with AMR, and she did notify me that she received a complaint via email and that they had opened an investigation internally. The results of that investigation proved that a crew, in fact, did pull up backwards in front of a deli, I believe, that was a red zone. They ran in, got their lunch, and left. That is not acceptable. It is illegal. It's not safe, and AMR has addressed it.
Okay.
So that's what I'm here to report.
Oh, good. Sometimes you just need to know that it's not acceptable.
Exactly.
And you don't do it anymore.
They were reminded.
That's right.
Yes.
Been there, done that.
That's a good breakthrough to lunch.
Okay. I don't think we need to do any further action at this point in time. Thank you very
Of course.
much.
Thank you.
Okay. That concludes our regular agenda. Oh, public comment? No public comment. Shall we